All right, and here we go. So, this is another episode of the Uncivilized Arts podcast. I'm your host, Bumi Hazan, but I go by Bandit Haze in the online space. And today we're going to be talking about The Boys seasons 1, seasons 2, seasons 3. And yes, I know that was grammatically incorrect, but man, don't care. I'm with my friend Sweet Bundy. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to get into some major spoilers about the first 3 seasons. Maybe talk a little bit, some speculation about season 4 as well. But yeah, we're going to get into some mad spoilers. So if you've not seen seasons 1, 2, and 3, you might want to do that first. But yeah, we'll let you know before we get into the spoiler section. But even still, yeah, you might want to check that out. But before we get into that spoiler section, before we get into our general kind of opinion section, before all of that, Mr. Sweet Bundy, sir, how you doing? How you been? Appreciate you coming through on this podcast thing. What you been up to lately, man?
Man, I just been working, and when I'm off work, sometimes I'm playing Diablo 4 and
Okay, yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
trying to beat Guardians of the Galaxy. I finally started playing that because I finally got a PS5 not too long ago. And those two great. Just great.
How was Diablo 4? That came out June earlier this month. I think about a week or so ago,
Yeah.
and it's been definitely got a lot of buzz. In fact, I think to my immediate kind of knowledge anyway and recollection of whatever, this seems to be the most promoted and hyped Diablo game ever. It definitely seems to be getting a lot of like press and attention. So like yeah, so how is it? I mean, is it worth the hype? Is it? I mean, I've never played the Diablo game. I'm somewhat assuming you have, but or have you played previous games before? Is it better than those? Is it just the same? Does it matter? What's the deal with Diablo 4?
Well, I haven't played any of the games before. What I did was I just played I got invited to the closed beta,
All right, yeah.
and when I played that, I was like, damn, this is gonna be a game that I'm gonna be hooked into. Like I'm gonna be playing for hours.
Mm,
Cause I played the closed beta, open beta. I played that for hours and hours. And now that it's out, I'm playing it for hours. Um, it's honestly one of the games that like World of Warcraft pretty much. And
oh yeah, yeah.
I never
Yes,
got to play World of Warcraft because I
same
didn't like
developers.
the
So yeah,
idea. Yeah, I didn't like the idea of playing, subscribing to something to play, and
yeah.
we already have so many subscriptions. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I could just play Maple Story or some shit. So, yeah, I mean, Diablo 4, to my understanding, the reason why it's so hyped is because the lore is pretty big, and I've been trying to keep, catch up with it a little bit. But from what I've read and what I've heard so far, apparently the antagonist of this story
Hmm.
has been talked about since the beginning of the first one, which is so many years ago.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Um, and now that antagonist is finally in the game where you're actually going to face them. So that's why it's like a big, big event. And apparently,
Okay.
this has been announced since 2017. So the real Diablo fans have been waiting a long, long time, and
Yeah.
they're just finally getting their fucking fingers into it, and they're happy. And I don't blame them because this game is good, even for somebody that's like an outsider like me coming in. It's fucking addicting.
Okay. So I mean, I guess you don't necessarily have to have played previous games to understand what's going on, but it sounds to me, at least the way you described it, that if you have played the previous games, you can get a lot more out of how it develops. Would you say that's about right?
I say you would appreciate it more. You would be more excited
Mm,
about certain things that's going on because I'm not gonna lie to you. uh, the only time I really pay attention to the story is if a side quest starts, comes of interest, or Lilith, the antagonist, is actually on screen. That's when I stop and I just watch, and like usually it's a cinematic cutscene, and you can still skip it, but when it comes to Lilith, nah, I'm not skipping it. She's like immediately interesting. The way the character is designed, the voice actor is
mm,
amazing. The music is great. Just everything about it is really fucking good. Um, just me, I'm a very impatient person. So when it comes to all listening to a random character start spieling about their tragedy, I don't give a damn. Unless I hear Lilith, then I stop what I'm doing. I stop all the skipping and I listen.
So
And if
is
I already
Lilith the
skipped it, then
main?
I'll
Oh,
read it.
sorry. Mm.
No, go ahead.
Is Lilith the main antagonist?
Yeah,
Okay, because so it is based on Catholicism,
I don't even know what the hell that is.
Catholic,
Oh,
Catholic religion. Yeah, I probably my bad. I say it wrong. Catholicism, but yeah, the Catholic religion. So Lilith,
yeah,
I'm trying to gonna have to refresh my memory real quick, but I think Lilith is like
the
from
daughter of
Adam and
hatred.
Eve days, and like people believe that Lilith was the real first woman and not Eve. Um,
Mm.
I've forgotten a little bit, but let's see.
I mean, pretty much with Diablo, apparently there was a war between heaven and hell, Lilith and some other guy. I'm sorry, Diablo fans, I forgot his name. I think it starts with an A. They got tired of the war, so they made their own space called a sanctuary. Now, the
Hmm.
sanctuary, some demons, or rather, some people from hell, some people from heaven, they all went there when they were tired of the war. But Lilith, sorry if I keep fucking up her name. Lilith, she had kids, to my understanding, and the kids were pretty much just evil. They were bad as hell. So one of the angels was like, "Yo, we gotta kill the kids or do something." And instead, Lilith decided to kill the person that was deciding to kill her kids.
All right.
And the guy that started this with her, he couldn't bring himself to kill her, so instead he banished her. So they banished her, and she's been gone since the beginning of the game, like the very first game.
Yeah.
And now, in this game, somebody finally summoned her.
Okay. Okay. I see. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, like I said, and I just looked it up real quick now. By the way, yeah. So until the late
Mm.
20th century, the demon Lilith, Adam's first wife, had a fearsome reputation as a kidnapper and murderer of children and seducer of men. Only with the advent of feminist movement in the 1960s did she acquire her present high status as a model for independent women. Um, but yeah, that's the Lilith in real. Well, actually, that's from Jewish Women's Archive. Actually, not the. Okay, I thought it's Catholic. Maybe it's based on Judaism. My bad. Sorry. Or maybe it's both.
No
Maybe they
problem.
intertwine in places. But anyway, anyway, I guess they're taking for lack of a better phrase, characters from scripture, and then I guess creating their own stories around them for the game, and doing it that way. By that sounds of it. Okay, cool, cool. All right then. Well, as for myself, I've been playing mostly Cyberpunk 2077. I've been enjoying that.
Mm.
It's pretty cool. I was playing Final Fantasy VII, the original, not the remake one, the original one, and I got all the way up to the final boss, or at least I hope he's a final boss, Sephiroth. And the thing is, like, from the moment you go into the cave to the moment you fight Sephiroth, for me at least, it was about 2 hours worth of gameplay and so many enemies, so many mid bosses that you fight along the way, and nowhere to save, or at least I didn't see anywhere to save. If there is, I missed it, I guess. But anyway, it was like about 2 hours worth of gameplay, nowhere to save, and I get to this final boss, and of course I'm weak by then with like low everything, and I fight as best I can, but of course he's way too powerful to end up killing me, and just the thoughts of doing it all over again it's just putting me off right now. So I thought, let me take a break from this game
Yeah.
and play something else. So I do intend on going back to Final Fantasy VII at some point, but yeah, I'm just playing Cyberpunk 2077 in the meantime. I actually completed Gears of War 4 again just recently as well. But Cyberpunk is pretty cool. I'm digging that game. just getting into the story. I still feel like I think I've something like 25, maybe 30 hours into the game. I still feel like I'm pretty much at the beginning of it, though. Like it's that kind of game. I have been doing quite a bit, quite a lot of side missions though. So of course that's part of it. But yeah, even still, it's still the way it kind of progresses. It's pretty cool, and the how they use Johnny Silverhand, which is Keanu Reeves' character. It's pretty
Hmm.
cool how they introduce him and everything else. So yeah, so far so good with Cyberpunk 2077. I did see that they announced a massive update coming. I'm not sure when. I think later in the year, like September or whenever it was. I think, but it's coming at some point. Which apparently is going to just practically redo the whole game by the sounds of it. So part of me is kind of like I'd rather complete it before that update comes.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if I'm going to because I don't always get a lot of time to play stuff. But if I can, that's my intention to try and complete it before at least complete the main storyline before that update comes in, and we'll see what that does and what the changes are and the differences and all that sort of stuff. I did watch Creed 3 recently as well, which I thought was great. Definitely a contender for one of my favorite Rocky movies, along with Rocky 3, which is just the cheesiest film ever, practically. But yeah, Creed 3 I really liked. I really liked Jonathan Majors. I think he's an amazing actor, Jonathan Majors. He really
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
Um, and Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut. I mean, he's clearly learnt a lot from Ryan Coogler, you know. And yeah, he just knocked it out of the park with this movie. It's a shame Stallone wasn't in it, but in all honesty, I'm not sure he was needed in this film either. You know,
Hmm.
but yeah, it was a great film. Definitely worth checking out. Whether you're a Rocky fan or not, I think it's just a great film. Um, and yeah, but also been watching Love, Death and Robots on Netflix, uh, which was suggested by Celeste Orchid, who's also a regular on the podcast as well. So
Hmm.
been watching that, and hopefully we get to talk about it with her in a little bit as well. But yeah, that's been pretty much what I've been doing over the past little while. Um, yeah, just keeping busy with gaming and movies and TV shows. And, that's been pretty much. Oh, actually, for those who might not know, and I should probably pimp this out a bit more actually, but I do have another channel where a YouTube channel where I talk about movies, and a lot of it is like making fun of movies, like nitpicking and making jokes, and and talking about plot holes and things that just don't make sense and things that don't add up, and that kind of stuff. And it's supposed to be like, well, hopefully they're these fun videos that hopefully still make some good points along the way as well. But yeah, I just did one recently that I just put up for Too Fast, Too Furious, which I know a lot of people say that's the best of the Fast and Furious movies. But I just put up a video called "Why Too Fast, Too Furious is Trash." So, um, but yeah, hopefully you guys will check that out. But like I say, they're supposed to be fun videos. So when it comes down to it, I like Too Fast, Too Furious. I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite of the Fast and Furious movies, but I will say Carter Verone is definitely my favorite villain of the Fast and Furious movies. Um, so it's got that for me. I'm not sure if it's my favorite movie, but it is. I would say it's amongst my favorite Fast and Furious movies. But Carter Verone is definitely my favorite villain. I'd have to rewatch a bunch of them again to decide whether that's my favorite movie or not. But it is definitely, I would say it's probably amongst the better ones. That being said, even good movies can be trash. So yeah, hopefully you guys can check that out and let me know what you think. That's Haze's movie room, and I think there's a link in the description on the YouTube thing. I think it should be around summer anyway. But yeah, all right, Sweet Bundy. Let's talk a little bit about the boys now. So yeah, we are going to get into some spoilers later on. Before we get into the major spoilers and that kind of stuff, though, um, what would be your very kind of basic, non-spoiler review slash opinion? Nothing too detailed, of course, for now. Of the boys from seasons 1 to 2. Like, how would you describe it in a few words without giving too much away about it?
Pretty much, if you want to see a show where it's gonna give off vibes of kick ass, where you're going to expect pretty much all okay, this is gonna be a story about superheroes, and maybe they might be assholes a little bit, but overall it's gonna be a comedy. Not exactly. Uh, it's definitely a revenge story. It's dark comedy at best. Um, or rather, the best way I would describe it, dark comedy, right up my alley. It's very reminiscent of James Gunn to me. Like, for example, my
Right. Okay.
favorite
Yeah.
film of all time, Super, is very reminiscent of that, where it's the unrealistic part is that superpowers exist, superheroes exist. However, it's done in a realistic setting. So it's almost like getting a sick glimpse of what if superheroes were really here and really existed. Um, yeah, it's brutal, straight to the point. It's fun, it's fast, it's a little sad at times because it's not always a laugh. It's not always done for laughs. There's some serious stuff in here, and if you pay attention and you're not just looking at the highlights, you'll see some deep stuff. People dealing with PTSD, people are dealing with sexual harassment, assault, and abuse, verbally, mentally, physically. There's so many other elements that's involved with the show, and not just in the first couple of seasons, but throughout the third season as well. Trauma is a repeated um, theme in this story. So I would really say that, honestly, on the surface level, you think you know what you're going to expect, but when you actually sit there and pay attention to the story, the characters, and the actors are great.
Mm.
You'll see the bigger picture, and you'll get to see all the details, and the rewatchability of this show is very high.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with that. As kind of just a basic kind of view for now. Yeah, I guess to sum it up, you could say, what if superheroes were real? And I guess technically speaking, like a lot of shows do their own kind of version of that. So maybe that's not a
Yeah.
great way to describe it, but ultimately that's the question that I think gets asked, let's say at the beginning. What if superheroes were real? And when you think of like reality and the things that you go through as a person, if you're a superhero, how does that amplify in a world where superheroes are like celebrities, and you think about some of the things that celebrities get up to, so how does that amplify if someone has superpowers, and especially when some of them are, at least so far, and again, not giving it too much, but some of them are near enough to, if not entirely, indestructible. What does that do to a person's psyche? How does that change their view of the world? How do they treat themselves? How do they treat others? Good, bad, in between. So yeah, it kind of asks that question, and then everything else is kind of, I guess, falls in line with that, as to what you said about the various kind of dramatic elements of it as well, and of course the comedic elements, and how they kind of intertwine and sort of go from one to the other. And there's definitely some really well done dramatic scenes. I'll save that for later on. In fact, one in particular I do want to mention, but again, let me not there, not now, not now. um, but yeah, I think it starts with that base question: what if superheroes were real? And then applies it to a world of social media, celebrity, stan culture, that whole thing. I guess. Oof. Actually, let me not say that now, just in case it's kind of a spoiler. But other things as well in there as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, so yeah, I'd agree with that. But yeah, because I think there is definitely a lot to be said about this show. Let's get to the spoilers now. Let's get to the spoilers. And so yeah, if you've not seen the show, you might want to do that first. Or if you've seen it, or if you just don't care about spoilers, then we'll continue. Um, there's a lot to be said. We're going to try and cover 3 seasons in one podcast episode. It's definitely a lot to be said. Um, I'm not even sure what the best way to approach this is. So let's just start off this way. What to you is the biggest standout of the show in terms of its say theme or just what it did for you from watching it from beginning to end? What did you take away the most from this?
Trauma.
Mm,
Just like I said already, like to see that practically every character, whether you hate them or not, they have some trauma that
yeah,
they're dealing with. Even Homelander, who's this fucking murderous psychopath, when you really think about it, over the top and everything, his whole shit is based off of trauma. Even a Diabolical series, they have this incredible episode that I recommend you watch when you get the chance. It's with Homelander just joining the Seven. It's animated or whatever, but still, it's
right, yeah.
I think it's done with the actual actors as the voice actors. Um, but either way, episode is great, and you get to see some glimpses into his psyche even more. Just like in season 3, they really start to dive deep into
Mm,
Homelander's mind cracking, and
mm,
they show hints of it before then, but still, you even have the Deep, who, you know, he's a piece of shit for what he did in season 1 with the sexual assault. Um, but as well, he's dealing with trauma, even though they play it for laughs at most
yeah.
parts, because they turn him into like a comedy sort of character, like a laugh, a joke.
Mm,
But if you take away the laughter and everything, you just sit there and watch exactly what's going on. You get to see him experience some trauma as well. And I'm not just talking about the lady that fucking fingered his gills, but just you get to see, okay, this whole time he's been a joke, he's been laughed at, he's been, um, ridiculed, he's been pushed aside, he's been abused, possibly by Homelander, who knows how much, because we already got glimpses of that. It
mm,
doesn't excuse his behavior, but it just shows, okay, these guys, they're going through their own things, but they just, they go about it their own way. And plus, it shows like there's this thing where if you're powerless and all that and you get some power out of nowhere, you might turn into an asshole yourself. You might turn into an abuser,
mm.
because now you're the one in control and you can't get enough of it. This is what you really wanted the whole time, and you start, it starts to corrupt you sometimes. It's not guaranteed, but it's been in other shows before as well. Like, for example, like Breaking Bad. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I really like the running theme of that. I feel like that's pretty much the dominant part. Uh, Even with like Soldier Boy, PTSD, trauma, and they haven't even dived too deep into his story. And I really hope that they bring him back. If I'm pretty sure they're not going to get rid of him, but hopefully he comes back in season 4. And if not season 4, then hopefully they have a season 5 and he comes back, because he's like my second or third favorite character out of the series, easily.
Yeah, and yeah, no, Soldier Boy, his introduction, the way they introduced him, rather, I should say, yeah, that was done well, and he's 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 kind of a weird character in the sense that initially you think he's dead because I said they're talking about him that he was killed by this weapon that they're trying to find. Turns out he's not dead. Turns out that he was tricked by his teammates. It was kind of set up. Um, Turns out they did that because he was an arsehole to them. He was very abusive to them. So like there's kind of these layers. But then he's back and he's on the side of Butcher trying to take down Homelander. And then it's like,
Hmm.
okay, so maybe we could kind of root for him, I guess. Trying to take a Homelander. But then, of course, he finds out, yeah, his connection with Homelander, and that was a no go. So I like to have they kind of introduce these kind of layers and sort of reveal it in stages, so you have these kind of mixed feelings about the characters. And to your point about trauma being kind of running theme, yeah, definitely throughout, there's a lot of either past trauma that gets brought into it, and you understand why they are the way they are, or current
Hmm.
trauma, some of the things they're going through, like Hughie experiencing his girlfriend being killed, Starlight, Annie being sexually abused, and then you have Butcher. whose past trauma is more to do with his brother. And I think the way they did that was just brilliant, actually, by the way, like in terms of they did it, because he gets like in that guy was it Mindstorm goes into his head and traps him in the nightmare. I
Yeah.
thought that was just a really good way of letting the audience know what Billy Butcher's going through, because like I feel like sometimes with TV shows they have a tendency to spoon feed things and it feels awkward, and they found a way to do it where that it fits in with what they're doing with the show, but at the same time lets the audience, this is what he's carrying with him. This is why he's such an arsehole all the time. And not to say that makes it okay for him to be an arsehole, but you get, what he's been carrying, and, with his father, with his brother and his suicide, you know, and then you understand that part of his character more now. Um so yeah, trauma definitely been is one of the things definitely for sure. Um, I would say one of the biggest things that stood out for me though was actually, I think it was later on in season three, and it was actually to do with Noir, Black Noir,
Yeah.
because his character throughout was pretty much in the background. He doesn't talk, he just kind of gets a job done. He's the one dependable member of the seven, right? And he's just kind of there, does his thing. He's not involved with all everybody's stories. He's not involved with the drama. He's not involved with this. He's just kind of, he does it. He turns up, does his job, presumably goes home or whatever he does. You know what I mean? He's not. He's just kind of in the background. But then season three brings him more to the front, and you see a little bit about his history with Vought and how he was with Payback initially. He wanted to show his face. Stan Edgar wouldn't allow it. And then, of course, he ends up in that explosion, so his face is all deformed and he couldn't talk. But then beyond that, you see some of his own trauma as well with Soldier Boy, and why he wanted to get rid of Soldier Boy because of the way he was treated. And the way they did it with the cartoons and the imaginary friends was just like, I feel like that's it made it hit a nerve, not a nerve, that's probably the right word to it. It just made it hit something deep, because like it was so different to how they built up Noir over the seasons. Like I say, he's this guy that's in the background, gets it done, he's dependable, no nonsense, nothing. But then his imaginary friends are these cartoon characters from his childhood, and they're kind of helping him, and he's looking at them for support. You see him as a side, and that for me was it brought Noir into this area where you see him as not just this guy who's almost machine-like person, but yeah, he is just a scared little boy underneath all of that. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so when he gets killed, it was like, okay, yeah, he's part of Seven. He's still kind of an arsehole because he's still supporting all these things going through, and he's got his own history. But when he got killed, it was like, damn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Damn. And it's just how a show or say a movie or whatever can do that with a character, can really kind of make you feel something for somebody, even though that person was barely in it before. And then they just bring them to this place where you learn a little bit about them, and not you just learn a little about it, but you learn it through a way that like lets you see them deep inside their mind as this very innocent child like character just sitting there with all these cartoons flying around him, and it's just oof. But yeah, that for me was one of the biggest standouts.
Yeah. I mean, to dive a little deeper, because um, he's my second favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, anybody else they'll typically laugh, but when you really sit back and you stop yourself from laughing on the surface level of it, like I said, if you really analyze the scene, you already see moments before then. I think even in maybe it was season two, you see childlike demeanors from him, like little,
Yeah.
like there's this one scene where I think it's season two, yeah, where he went over to kill the the soup terrorists, and there's this one scene where he beheads one of them, and he passes by, he sees a kid, and he picks up the toy and plays with it just to show the kid or whatever, and then he leaves.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so he there's little hints that he's not all there in the head. So for him to go ahead and cope by using cartoon characters. That's part of his childlike ways. Um, and in a way, it's almost like Homelander killed a kid,
Mm,
or rather straightforward, a guy with the mind of a child. Sometimes, I
yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong, you know, Noir is still capable of doing incredible things and vicious things and violent things, but he's mainly doing what he's told and what he thinks is right. Whatever, right?
Mm,
The friendship between him and Homelander was always kind of there. Like even since season one, you don't get to see too many scenes with them, but anytime when he acknowledges Noir, he's like, "Yeah, you did good,"
yeah.
and all that. Like even when he was reprimanding the whole team in one scene, I think this was actually season
Yeah.
one.
Except you, except you,
Yeah.
Noir. You're good. Yeah.
It
Except you. Like, yeah.
reminded me of this movie called Old School with Will Ferrell and I forgot who else. Damn, he's an actor that's well known. He's like a B plus actor that's well known in a lot of comedy movies. But um in that movie, Will Ferrell is like yelling at everybody. They're like a college fraternity or something like that. And he's yelling at everybody, and there's this one old ass guy named Blue. And he's like, "Except you, Blue. I fucking love you, Blue." He's like, "Thank you, sir."
Yeah, Will
I'm telling you.
Ferrell,
On
Luke
a side
Wilson,
note, you
and
got to
Vince
see
Vaughn, by
that
the way.
movie. On a side note, you definitely have to see that movie, Old School.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not
funny
sure
as
if I have
hell.
seen this. I mean, it looks familiar, but yeah, I'm just
It's
looking at it
funny as
now.
hell.
Will Ferrell, Luke Wilson, Vince Vaughn,
Yeah, Luke
uh,
Wilson. There we go. That guy is well known, like
Cuthbert.
especially early 2000s.
I don't know if I've seen this, maybe like years ago, but it really looks familiar. So yeah, maybe I'll check
It
it again, and if I
you
haven't
got
seen
to.
it, then I should see it, or if not, then refresh my memory, I guess.
You got
Yeah.
to. It's funny as hell. Don't watch it live though, because they got some nudity in that movie. You'll get banned. But anyway, um, yeah. So it reminded me of that. I like the friendship between them, and I wish we got to see more. But honestly, if you want my honest opinion, I don't think he died. It just makes no sense in the end. To have
What's to kill
Noir,
Noir?
yeah, to have Noir killed like that, no.
I mean, he got,
He-
was it a fist for his stomach? Was it? Is that right? If I remember
Yeah,
correctly, I think he got put his fist for his stomach, like all the way through,
yeah,
like like all the way through, like
yeah,
through. You know what I mean? Not just like punched him
yeah.
real hard, like he like, you know what I mean? Like
Hey,
death
I mean,
becomes there, put a
to
hole
be
in his
honest,
stomach. You know what I mean?
we've seen pretty
Mm,
much a lot of you know crazy stuff already with these characters surviving somehow. Noir, for it doesn't make sense if you really look at how they built up his character and how powerful he is. Because his power, he's not as strong as Homelander, but he could put up a fight with Homelander if he decided to go one on one with him. Because Noir is not like some just one to lower class or whatever. Yeah, he got stuck with the whole almond shit, but again, he's like a child sometimes, so you could get him like that. But for him to get killed like that, no, it doesn't make sense. Writing wise, they would not kill off a character that major or that they're building up so much like that. It's so anticlimactic, and it wasn't even done as a like usually when they have a character killed off like that, there has to be a punchline at the end. Like, oh, we subverted your expectations. But instead it was just an intense scene and he got
mm.
supposedly killed. I don't believe that's the end. I feel like if they're gonna somehow resurrect his ass or something. And um I was saying that even before. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm not saying anything too much. Hmm. I'll
Yeah,
probably save that for later.
I'm not sure it's entire. I mean, because I'm thinking about it, like, yeah, I think there are definitely quite a few, especially of the superhero deaths, or the soups rather, as they call them. When they die, there's usually some kind of comedic element to it. I think that is true. Um, that being said. like when when the supes are killing, there usually isn't. So, for example, when Homelander kills, he lets the plane crash and all the people die. There was no comedic element to that. When Homelander killed Marion Stillwell, there was no comedic element to that. You
Nah, what
know,
I mean is this. Um, when you have an ant, like, how can I explain? All right, so they're building up Noir going to fight um Soldier Boy, you know? They're
hmm
building it up and making it, they're giving him all this background, and you're like, okay, we're ready for a fight, right?
yeah,
And then he gets confronted by Homelander, and now you're like, okay, either these two are gonna fight or they're gonna join. But
hmm
then there's no fight. Instead, he gets punched through the chest, and his cartoon characters say goodbye to him. That's it, done.
yeah,
Story wise, they wouldn't do that to a character that's been around that long and that close, because there's so much potential of a good fight, of something good, of something interesting, something deeper. This guy didn't even get to see Soldier Boy again, and that's something
hmm
very interesting. So I think instead they're going to do something else with him. It makes no sense as far as like their skill of writing, because they haven't done anything where I was like, oh, that was bad. If they did something like that, then I would understand, okay, maybe this was just a decision that I find that was, bad. But in this case, nah. I have too many. Maybe it's me just having too much faith in them, but I believe that the writers are too talented to waste that potential. There's so much more that you could do with this character, and I'm really surprised that so many people are convinced that he's just dead like that, because just comics in general, comic themed movies in general, they don't really kill off characters like, someone like Noir like that simple. It was too easy when you think about it. Even with somebody like Homelander, it was too easy.
I mean, maybe. I guess that always be seen for season 4, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think right now my initial feeling is that he is dead. But if they bring him back, I mean, I guess they could because they haven't really told us much about what exactly Noir's powers are. We know that he could fight. We know that he's, I guess, pretty strong too. But I haven't really gone into much detail about the specifics of his powers. So perhaps he's got some regenerative thing as well. Um, Maybe. I guess I wait to be seen. But yeah, I think for now my initial feeling is that he's dead. But yeah, you could be right. You could be right. We'd have to wait till whenever to find that out.
Hmm.
All right. Well, speaking of dead and characters dying and characters that I guess we're pretty sure that are definitely dead. There are a few of those. Um, the first one being Robin Ward, which was Hughie's girlfriend. Um, what did you think of? I kind of lost my point. But let's talk about Huey for a moment. Anyway, it's great. Let's talk about Huey. So yeah, Huey comes into it because his girlfriend dies. But then, of course, by the time you get to season 3, his whole reason has changed. What did you think of Huey's journey from regular dude to superhero, fighter? What do you think of that?
It made sense. He's always felt powerless. He's always felt like, weak and incompetent, but he's been struggling to do what's right. He has a heart of gold, and that's the biggest part of him is his heart. He was always trying to be brave and always trying to do what's right and say what's right. And no matter how scared he was always trying to do what's right. Um, but now that he has a way to fight back, of course he's gonna take it. And he doesn't want to listen to anything else really, but um for him to go ahead and, because I don't really recall how it ended with him. I think, because remember they revealed that the temp V was actually killing them, and
Yeah,
I think he managed to stop it, or rather, Starlight managed to convince him to stop taking it finally.
yeah, she did. But then he found one last bottle of Temp V, and he had. I mean, I don't. Yeah, he hasn't taken it so far, but he did find it. So does he take it
Hmm.
later on? Is that the one that kills him? Because they said 3 to 5 doses, and I think at that point he already had two. No, it's 2 or 3. I think. Hmm. I can't remember anyway, but yeah, he had quite a few at that point, so he's already on that very near. If he takes one more, 2 more, he's gone, and he found that one more bottle of or vial rather of a Temp V, but he hasn't taken it yet, but he did find it. So that
Yeah,
temptation was kicking in because when he had the Temp V, and he felt that power, that did something to him. That really did something to him because he went from, I remember from when he met Annie and she was in the boat, they were going on that bowling date, and he didn't care that she was stronger than him. He didn't care that she was an amazing bowler. None of that bothered him until he took the Temp V, and then he became powerful. And I guess he kind of felt like now he can do all these things that maybe he wished he can do before, right? Now he could be the one to save her, not realizing that's never what was missing, or never what it was about. It's never what she wanted from him. But because I guess he got into his own ego a little bit about now he could be the one to save her, it kind of put him in that, that typical kind of view of I'm the man and I'm the one to do this sort of thing. Um, but yeah, that he loved that feeling. He loved that feeling. So is he gonna take that Temp V one more time? Well, let's wait to say season 4 to find out. But yeah, he he's teetering.
yeah. I don't really see it as his ego. I think it was just, you know, he was tired of being the one that always needed somebody to help him, always needed somebody to save him at the end of the day. Even Butcher, even before Butcher was taking the temp beat, Butcher was the strong one that, would save him, protect him at the last moment or something like that. He was tired of it. He was tired of feeling useless. Like he'll just be standing there and he's not really doing anything, and he's tired of it. So
Mm,
he just wanted to feel like, yeah, I can be involved. I can help too. I can actively help. I don't have to just be there. Um, if you notice, like throughout the seasons, a lot of Huey scenes is just him talking, him yelling, and yeah, he has a few moments where he actively does something, but it's always set up by someone else. Like
mm.
when he killed Translucent, he didn't put the bomb up Translucent's ass. That was Frenchie and Butcher. So yeah, so he never really got to do something that was his own thing, and he's like, yeah, I did it, and I did it right. Even when it came for him to plant the transmitter, it got caught by Translucent, so he felt like a fuck up. Um, he couldn't stop his first girlfriend from dying, and you know, from the jump, that's what traumatized him. That's what had him like damn, I couldn't do anything to help her. I couldn't stop it. Nothing. It was gone in an instant. And even though he got past that point, I feel like you can't really completely ever get over something like that.
Mm.
And I feel like that's what's always nagging him in the back of his mind, that he's weak. He's weak.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I feel it, but that's what I mean by ego. Your ego sometimes when you get that little bit of a boost, especially when you do feel, powerless all the time, and you do feel like you're kind of in the background. And the truth is that he's not powerless. His strengths lie elsewhere. He's not the physical beat them up type guy, but
Mhm.
he is at times the more thoughtful person. And in fact, at one time, one of them, I can't remember who it was, but one of the characters refers to him as being Butcher's Canary, meaning that he's the guy that helps keep Butcher in line. So that's kind of his power, Huey's power of kind of keeping people from going too far. But he doesn't maybe realize that himself, and he's maybe caught up in this whole idea of, oh, Butcher could do that, and he can do this, and perhaps because he knows that he can't be physical, he's had to suppress that feeling for so long of, oh, it's fine, and to the point where he's maybe convinced himself that it's fine, to the point where he could tell, and it's not a problem, go ahead, be the best, and he's convinced himself. But the moment, or maybe not the moment, but certainly when he got that opportunity and to feel what it's like to be powerful and to be able to actually be involved and to be able to save people, I think that's when the ego kind of kicked in a little bit, because there's all those suppressed feelings that now come out, and it's like, I'm the guy now, you know what I mean? And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like this where maybe at a job or whatever, where you've kind of felt like, you're just some guy, nobody cares, but then maybe you get a promotion or maybe something happens, and now, the tables are turns type feeling. That definitely does give like a little bit of an ego boost when things turn around. And it's just a feeling. If it's not happened, and if it does happen to you, I'm telling you now, you definitely got to be careful with that feeling, because it does feel good. I ain't gonna lie, it feels good when, like, you're the guy in charge now. You're the guy that could do things now. You're the guy
Mhm.
that could, whatever it is, you're the guy with the power now. And it is a good feeling. If you're not careful, then yeah, that same thing that happened to Hughie, where he's becoming addicted. Um, well, at least it seemed like he was becoming addicted. He was able to kind of reel it in when Annie spoke to him. But yeah, man, if you're not careful, if you don't have your own canary, I guess Annie was his canary in that moment. If you don't have something to kind of pull you in and to let you know that, dude, you might want to take a step back. This is what could happen, if you keep going down this path, and be able to say, hey, okay. But yeah, there is definitely an ego boost when you have those situations where you're the guy that can't really do much, then all of a sudden you can do everything. It's
Yeah.
definitely an ego boost. You know.
Yeah. I gotta agree.
Mm. But Huey though, I feel like he is perhaps the one good guy in the whole thing, and maybe not entirely good. To be fair, he's had his moments, but I feel like he's at least the closest, to an actual good guy in this whole thing. And maybe Annie to an extent as well, but certainly I think Huey is maybe a little bit closer. Um, I mean, definitely not Butcher. I thought Butcher might be the protagonist as far as the viewer's concerned, in terms of like we're watching him trying to complete his missions of taking down Vought, and because of that, we kind of naturally side with Butcher, because we're watching through his lens. Ultimately, he's not a good person. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
not a good guy at all. Um,
Yep.
or Frenchie, and even Mother's Milk. He's maybe a bit closer, because I feel like he's the guy who knows who he is. He knows what he's done, and perhaps is trying to be a better person now. But even he's
Hmm.
like not really. So yeah, Huey, and I guess Starlight as well are the closest, I think, to actual good people, and maybe Huey a bit more than Starlight are the closest to actual good people in the whole thing. Um, but what's your thoughts on that? Good guys and bad guys, and who do you think are the good guys, if any, on the show, on the show?
I mean, you can never really say someone is completely good,
Mm,
completely bad,
sure.
but you could damn sure say, all right, this person is like 90% bad, you know?
Yeah.
Like Homelander is definitely one of those 90% bad characters. Um, but it's definitely percentages. Uh, I really like that nobody is completely good. Like everybody in this show has flaws. Even Annie.
Yeah.
Annie tries to be this, wholesome girl at first and everything, but she has her flaws too. And
Mm,
that's what I appreciate about the writing in this show is that these characters are believable.
yeah.
I have,
Yeah.
off the top of my head, I can't really recall one character where I'm like, they were completely innocent, you know, except for like the kids. Those are the
Yeah.
only characters that they're completely innocent.
Well, I guess Ryan ain't completely innocent now either, though. So
Well, true, yeah.
he's
Um,
he's tainted now.
yeah, and I'm very interested in seeing where that goes. What's interesting about Ryan is that I didn't realize that the kid that first appeared at season one's finale is a different actor, a different child actor. When
Okay, right.
Homelander first saw his kid,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
realize that, and I'm hoping that they keep this kid around because he is a good actor.
Yeah, I don't think I noticed that either. But I think to be fair, like it's such a brief scene at the end of season one when you see him. Um, and I guess the other kid they got to play, maybe I get well, that he must have got someone who looked pretty close and certainly had the same hairstyles and things like that.
Nah,
So
they didn't
yeah, I
even really
guess it
have
wouldn't be too noticeable.
nah, they didn't even really have the same hairstyle. It was like
Really?
almost a yeah. Even
Okay, I'll have to
the
double
first
check
kid,
then.
he looked like he was a little shorter. Um, but in situations like that, usually they try it out. They say, okay, they'll get a different actor, or maybe the kid couldn't commit to the heavy schedule. I've seen it before with older child actors or whatever. They just can't commit to the schedule, but that's the problem with child actors. Sometimes you guys switch them out, and I just
Yeah.
hope that this kid, since he stayed with 2 seasons so far, it seems like, yeah, 2 seasons, that they keep him because he's pretty damn good. Um,
Mm.
I was impressed by him. I really like the whole dynamic between, even though it's very short lived, between him, Homelander, and Soldier Boy. I really like that idea. I want to see more of that. Um, yeah, I was about to start talking about that whole fight scene because I had a problem with it,
With
but
Stormfront.
no, no, no. Uh, season three's finale.
Okay, right. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
Butcher
Stormfront
and
thing was fine.
yeah,
I liked it.
Butcher, Soldier Boy, Homelander, and then Ryan was around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I think. Well, I don't. I mean, it was yeah. I did have a slight gripe with it. Um, I mean, the scene itself was mostly fine, I guess. Um, it did kind of feel like they did pull the punches a little bit, though. You know what I mean? Like, okay, Ryan got hurt, and of course, they don't want to hurt the boy. Then both Homelander and you know, Butcher, they both care for the boy, so it makes sense in that regard. But then with the way the characters have been so kind of like ruthless and heartless and in pursuit of what they're trying to do, and then it became to this scene, and it was like, okay, the kid got hurt, but it wasn't like he was like dying or anything. Like they could have just you think he still could have been like, hey, look, just leave the kid alone. We concentrate on home. You know what I mean? He could have done stuff like that, but instead he just switched and started fighting against Soldier Boy, and it's like, really, really, you know? But yeah, minor gripe, minor gripe.
For
So
me, it was
what
just
did you
the
think
whole
of it?
Maeve situation. I didn't like that. Um, I don't know. I felt like Maeve was kind of shoehorned in. She should have had a separate kind of bout with Homelander elsewhere beforehand. I really felt like she was so out of place during that fight because honestly, when you really think about it, you have father, grandfather, father, son, and then stepfather, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it made sense. It's about fathers, and it's about what direction is Ryan going to go into. That's your story right there. But then Maeve comes out of nowhere and she's like, "Yeah, remember me?" And it's just so it irked me so bad because it was just like, why is she here? And I'm supposed to be rooting for her because of everything that she gone through is such bullshit that she went through. And I'm not
Mm.
saying like bad writing bullshit, but rather
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
fucked
Good.
up. So I
What
wanted her to
Homelander
get
did
her
to her.
revenge. Huh?
In terms of how Homelander treated her and that whole thing.
Yeah. And it was, it was fucked up. So I wanted to see her get her revenge, but that was not the time. That was completely not the time. And even Homelander reacted to her how was thinking. Like, listen,
But not now, mate. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, you just said, didn't you?
yeah. And I'm just like, but she just wouldn't stop. It was just like, it was so selfish because Homelander was actually trying to protect the kid. So he was
Mm,
actually trying to do something right. Regardless of his reason, he's trying to protect the fucking kid. So let him be. And
mm.
then you could go ahead, whatever beef you have with him, you handle. But fucking protect the kid first, and then you get your little revenge. So I didn't like Maeve being there. And they seem to be like putting her character off, and she's got right off in the sunset. And that sucks because honestly, she deserved that one-on-one fight with Homelander where she gets to go all out. And of course she would have died, but they could have done something where she fights him and he's injured during the fight. She's presumed dead. Then he goes to, eventually goes to the scene where we see Butcher, Soldier Boy, and Ryan. And in that fight, he's already handicapped because of his fight with Maeve. They could have done something like that because it would have been interesting. But then again, um, yeah, it just would have been interesting to see and would have made the fight a little bit more fair because Soldier Boy, of course, he's able to go toe and toe with Homelander to a certain extent. I don't think he will be able to beat Homelander one on one, but it would have made sense to have Butcher and Homelander fighting Soldier Boy while Homelander's injured. So now that's the advantage that Soldier Boy has. Great
Mm.
fucking layout, and that could have easily happened, but instead, I don't know. I feel like there was somebody in the writers' room that kept saying, "But we should do this, we should do that," and that sucks. That really sucks.
Yeah, no, for sure, and yeah, I think when I watched that, there was definitely that sort of feeling of like you kind of want to see this Homelander and that whole thing, and with Soldier Boy and that fight, but then it got interrupted, so there was kind of like a little bit, but I feel like
Yeah.
overall I didn't mind Maeve being there. Certainly, I didn't mind it as much as you did, by the sounds of it. But yeah, I don't mind Maeve being there because ultimately Maeve has her own agenda and has her own issues with Homelander and doesn't have to care about the convenience of Homelander trying to save it. She's like, okay, this is my opportunity and I'm taking it. And so I get it from that point of view that it's not always going to be neat and fit in with a cool story conclusion, whatever. And it's just like, hey, look, this is my opportunity to fight Homelander, possibly kill him or injure him or whatever she thought she can do, and I'm taking it, and she did that. But then of course when she sees that Soldier Boy was about to blow up, is like, oh, damn it, and pushes him out the window, and ends up losing her powers over it. So yeah, I didn't mind it. I mean, I guess it was a little bit of a when it happens, but overall I was like, all right, cool, I get it. Do your thing, girl. Do your thing.
Yeah.
But speaking of Maeve, though, let's talk a little bit about Maeve, Queen Maeve, because of course she has her own story arc throughout the 3 seasons. In fact, I guess even going back before the 3 seasons, um, there was a line, I think in season 3 towards the end, where she tells Annie, it was something along the lines of when I saw you crying in the bathroom that day when you first walked in, you saved me. And I think that really says something about Maeve because she's seen all this nonsense going on, all the abuse, the cover ups, everything, and she's even involved with the whole thing with the aeroplane going down and not saying anything about that. So you can kind of tell from that moment that she doesn't want to be there anymore. She's kind of sick of it. She's sick of having to lie about who she is. She's sick of having to, push her girlfriend to the side. She's sick of having to pretend to be something that she isn't. And then throughout the seasons, you see how Homelander's using that as leverage against her, and still, and that whole thing. And
Mhm.
even when it comes to putting out the video, where she's like, "Look, I'll just pull out this video," and he's like, "I don't even care." And eventually, he was like, kind of worried, but afterwards, like, I don't care. I'd prefer to be loved, but if I won't be loved, then I'll be feared. That kind of thing. So she effectively loses her leverage with that. Um, and then by the time we get to the end, I think at one point she's like almost an alcoholic or near enough to. Um, she's going back to her girlfriend but can't commit and messing her around. And then at the end, of course, she's like, I'm just gonna fight this guy. So yeah, she has a few has a journey herself and a lot of different emotions being displayed from season 1 to season 3. What was your thoughts on Queen Maeve and her story arc and how that developed over the 3 seasons?
You know, Maeve, she was definitely one of the characters I really liked. I liked seeing her go from being just a piece of shit like any of them to where they started to break into her character pretty kind of deep in season 1, showing her background, giving hints that as to what she was going through, the hinting that she had a drinking problem and all of that. And it wasn't done with so much sympathy per se, but it was done like, hey, this is who she is. If you feel sorry for her, you feel sorry for her. If you don't, you don't. It's up to you. And you get to see the human side of her, and you get to also see that she just, like a lot of them, just goes along with the bullshit because she feels like she has no choice really. Homelander's too powerful to go ahead and say, all right, I'm done with you, I'm done. He repeatedly warns them and threatens them easily. And it's like, yeah, if I did this to you, I could get away with it. And you honestly believe it. Like anybody in her shoes or any of their shoes, they'll go along with it. Don't listen to anyone. Like the average person will do whatever the fuck Homelander says. And then in turn, yeah, you may turn out to be an asshole yourself. Um, but yeah, I feel like in season 3, there was, I don't know, I felt like there was a minority amount of writers, or maybe just one writer, that just kept making terrible choices for her in season 3. Because some of the shit just started to turn me off so bad about her character. And that like I said, her interrupting that fight scene, that was the last straw. So if she comes back for season 4, I really hope that that writer, whoever made the decision to have her do some of this stupid shit and shoehorn her in at the wrong moment, I hope they're not involved anymore. I hope they leave her character alone. They have no decisions over that, because yeah, that's how you ruin a character. It made no sense. A lot of stuff in that final fight. I can't remember off the top of my head easily, but a lot of that stuff didn't make any sense. I do vividly remember how I felt. I felt frustrated, and I felt like it was incomplete. I was like, why is this happening? I do remember asking myself that. So I'm gonna rewatch it again, of course, even just for my own curiosity and get a second opinion from myself. But yeah, I do remember being frustrated with that ending, that fight. I mean,
Yeah.
um, definitely somebody in the writers' room should not have been there, and they had too much pull.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see that. I would say like with Maeve and her writing, just something that's just kind of just thought of now actually, yeah, and it's so all go along the idea of superheroes in real life and everything else, and there's a lot that the show does well, of course, but with Maeve's girlfriend Elena, they yeah, Elena, they pretty much end up together by the end, and I just kind of thought like that wouldn't happen. Or I don't know, maybe it
Mhm.
would. I guess I've never been in a lesbian relationship, but, uh, but it just kind of felt like Elena felt. It felt to me like Elena was already done with it, and regardless of the fact that Maeve has come round and she's better now, Elena was just kind of done and moved on, and it just what I mean. Like it kind of felt like that's not the ending. It's good that okay, Maeve is better now. She's got herself together. Blah blah blah. That's great, but the ending isn't her ending up with Elena. The ending is maybe more Elena's done her own thing, moved on, maybe even met somebody else, and Maeve is kind of like Jules at the end of Pulp Fiction, wandering the earth. You know,
Mhm.
that's how it felt like it should have been. Like the fact that they ended up together just felt more like a cop out. I mean, it's not a terrible ending, I guess, but it just felt like, kind of like a cop out. You know what I mean? Like after
Yeah.
everything that, even granted, it was not necessarily intentional, but she did put Elena through a lot. You know, and for her to still be like, okay, you're better now, cool. Yeah, it just felt like a cop out rather than, you know what, happy for you, but I'm moving on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they did do that thing with Elena though, where they were bringing her into the kind of Vought family, so to speak, and try and play up the whole thing about the relationship for, you know, the points and stuff. And just with Vought as a company that is very much, you know, cash rules everything around me, right? You know, there's money over everything with this company, money and popularity, and you know they will be mad at somebody for doing something, but then when they realize, oh, actually, there's an uptick in the demographic of males between 25 and, you know, like, and now and they're happy again. um you know, so the company Vought, supposedly, according to Stan Edgar, was started off as, or is was intended to be a pharmaceutical company. I guess that's technically true when you see Stormfront's history as well, but it's very much different from that, and it's become invested in the whole kind of superhero and a thing, and you know, money and status, and getting into military because that could mean bigger contracts and more money and stuff like that. Um, the idea of go along with the idea of the superheroes in real life. What do you think Vought represents in real life? Like, what do you think what that was a metaphor? What do you think that was supposed to be a metaphor for?
For Vaught's existence.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's just how like agencies and in general how they deal with celebrities,
Mm,
especially when the average person becomes a celebrity, like reality stars, right?
yeah.
They used to be a thing. So once you go from being this average person or a viral person, or whatever, and then you become a celebrity, I think it just represents that because um, pretty much, I mean, I haven't been in that position, so I don't know how true it is, but pretty much the belief is that um, you have managers, you have agents or whatever, and they tell you how to act. They tell you what to say, what to do. Oh,
Hmm.
you should be posting this. You shouldn't be posting that. And the same thing happens with very popular streamers. They get a management team or they get a PR team or something like that. Uh, hell, some people don't even control their own social media. They'll hire somebody to do it
Yeah.
or get one of their super fans to do it and be like, hey, just pretend you're me, just control my social media account, do whatever you can to get followers and promote my stuff. Um, yeah, we see it to this day. With Vought is just honestly, I don't think it was too much of a metaphor for anything. I think it was just, this is something that you can definitely see happening in real life where if heroes were around, definitely there's going to be people trying to market it.
Mm,
And I that's why it's such a great idea because it's like you haven't seen that. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but you haven't seen that just yet, having it done in that way. And even if you look on Twitter or Facebook or even YouTube, they still do stuff in character as if it was real. It's like wrestling where you stay in kayfabe, stay in character.
yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting. They just released a video this today about the whole Homelanders going to court soon to go ahead and defend himself for protecting his kid from Starlight thug, no, a Starlight supporting thug. And we need you to go ahead and stand behind this hero. We do believe in American justice, and just talking as if it's real. And I love that because that's how you keep
Okay.
engagement
I
and
know they did that.
interest.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
That's
it's,
pretty
it's
cool.
really dope. Yeah.
But yeah, I would. I mean, yeah. I mean, for me, I felt like Vought just kind of represented that extreme greed. Um, that I would guess we all have some kind of greed on some level, but then you see it in more extreme cases where they don't care about the individual; they just care about, you know, money, and they just care about what you can do for them. And the moment you are no longer useful to them, you know, your relationship's gone, your relationship is gone, and I think Vought kind of represented that extreme idea of that. And I mean, I'm not sure there's any company that is that blatantly extreme about it, but there's certainly inklings of that you see in like you say with maybe the way people deal with streamers or the way people deal with all WWE. I mean, they've had their controversies over the years with how they've done things. So yeah, we've definitely seen examples, and I guess Vought is just that, and then multiplied it. Of course, it's exaggerated for and dramatized for the show, but then it's not exactly that far off some real life things either in terms of how they treat their celebrity, so to speak. The superheroes. How they talk to the people. Like, for example, they had a lady coming in that had no regard for her, just as long as it made them look good. They didn't even care that much about Maeve being bisexual. It was like, oh, we're gonna call you a lesbian because that sounds better. So like that, it was very much like, we're gonna do what we think is right for our bottom line. And Ashley, by the way, the character Ashley, um, she was played flawlessly. I'm blanking on the actress's name right now, but she was just played flawlessly from beginning to end. And her character just being that person who is not just she only cares about the company's bottom line, but of course she cares about herself first and foremost. And she's gonna
Mhm.
kiss ass if she has to. She's gonna shout at you if she has to. She's gonna rip her own hair out if she has to, literally. But yeah, she was just played flawlessly and represented like Vought, as the concepts of Vought as an individual, from very much season 1 to season 2 to season 3, and then the person who I think by the time she's, was it season 2 or 3? I think at some point she takes over somebody's position, but she's not really in charge. You know what I mean? She's not really in charge. She's officially in charge, but she's not really in charge, and she knows it. But she doesn't care about that. What she cares about is staying alive and making money. And that is her character. And yeah, she was played flawlessly from beginning to end. And then of course other Ashley, when they brought her later on. Oof, felt sorry for her, man, when they're all getting out of the building, and she was like, oh, actually, the helicopter's only for senior. It's like, oh shit. But yeah, that's what Vought was for me, just representing that greed in an extreme level, but maybe not too dissimilar to certain things we've seen in real life as well.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of comparing to real life, this is something that I saw long before I started watching the show. Let me, so I could get your thoughts on this. And that was comparing Homelander to Donald Trump. Um, and I did try to find something, but while I'm looking for what I found, because I've really doesn't even note it down, but while I'm looking for that, what do you think of the notion of Homelander being a metaphor for Donald Trump?
I think it's ridiculous.
Okay.
I do. I hate that. Like, don't get me wrong, the people that support Homelander in in the show is obviously supposed to be like the MAGA people, but it's also a representation of almost anybody
Mm-hmm.
that was in that position where they're on that side of, like, I don't even want to say Republicans per se, but yeah, that's pretty much it. The extreme Republicans. Um, but Homelander being like Donald Trump, of course, there's like certain hints and certain jokes that the writers put in there, but Homelander is not supposed to be Donald Trump. If anybody really says that, honestly, they're giving Donald Trump a compliment, because Homelander is fucking powerful as fuck. And he's not a dumbass. He makes stupid decisions every now and then, but it's not out of stupidity. This is the same man that uh decided, okay, if we come up with a super villain, if we have a super villain, we could easily get into the fucking military. Oh, if we go ahead, let's turn this whole plane crash around. This is how we could go ahead and run it. Like, the guy, whenever he makes a bad decision, it's because he's frustrated, he's angry, and he's arrogant. It's not because he's stupid. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is fucking stupid.
Mm.
Stupid and childish, you know? And the only reason why he became president was because he made Hillary Clinton drop down to his level. And that's why I blame her for why they even, not to get too political, but because she stooped down to his childish demeanor instead of showing her maturity and showing her own intelligence and own experience, she instead dropped down to his level, threw insults just like he did, and kept her arguments was just insulting him really as the highlights of her debate. And if you drop down to his level and he's a master at it, of course you're going to be mocked. And that's exactly what
Mm.
happened. She looked like a fool. He looked like he was dominant, and that's what happened. That's why he won. Okay.
Mm.
You see, the second time around, he didn't win. Joe Biden stooped down to his level a couple of times, but in the end, he still showed more maturity and everything than Donald Trump did. Donald Trump is a fool. Homelander is not a fool. He's just arrogant. He's
Mm.
arrogant, ignorant, and egotistical. He's spiteful, impulsive, all of these things. But most of all, powerful yet clever. He does have a heart, and whether it's a little bit, just a percentage of it is good, he still has a heart. He protected his kid. He loves his kid in the end. Um, Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to excuse Homelander's, bad side because the motherfucker is evil.
Yeah, no,
This
for
man is
sure.
still the guy that crushed a person's head while while practically having sex, and got a hand job from his Nazi girlfriend that was injured while she's in the
Oh
hospital.
yeah, yeah.
This guy's evil. Um, but yeah,
Okay.
I hate hearing that people try to compare him to Trump. Honestly, a few things are there, but to say that he's playing the role of Trump, no, absolutely not. The people, on the other hand, yeah, they are supposed to be MAGA people.
Okay. So this is I'm about to read something that the Eric Kripke, the one of the showrunners, or the showrunner rather, said in the interview. This is from Giant Freaking Robots website. Um, so the comparisons to Trump, by the way, might not be too unfounded. So this is what Kripke said during the interview. So I'm going to read a quote. Homelander has always been a Trump analog for me. He has this really combustible mix of complete weakness and insecurity, and just horrible power and ambition. And it's just such a deadly combo. Of course, he would feel victimized that people are angry that he dated a Nazi. All he ever wanted is to be the most powerful person he can be, even though he's completely inadequate in his abilities to handle it. And those issues just happens to reflect the guy who was fucking president of the United States. I might have read the intonations wrong. Who was fucking president of the United States? I think I'm supposed to say it like that. Sorry. And it's a bigger issue than just Trump. The more awful the more awful public figures act, the more fans they seem to be getting. That's a phenomenon that we, the boys, wanted to explore. That Homelander is realizing that he can actually show them who he really is, and they'll love him for it. That's what Eric Kripke, the showrunner, said. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think for me, by the way, let me preface what I'm about to say, but I don't follow politics that closely. So yeah, I'm not trying to know what's going on I'm not trying to claim to know what's going on in America, but certainly from as an outsider looking in, and from the things that we do here, I can see what you're saying, and I can see where Eric Kripke's saying as well. It's not necessarily that he is everything that Donald Trump does, right?
Mm,
Or every exactly supposed to be like Donald Trump, but there's maybe elements that they've taken um, and applied them to a different type of character. You know what I mean? Or at least I feel like that's what. he's saying here, and I guess pretty much what you were saying as well, that there's elements of the character in there, but not necessarily this is him. But of course, coming at a time where everything is so politicized between, is I guess people are gonna notice certain things more than they might normally notice it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for myself, again as an outsider looking in, I mean, I don't know if I would have picked up on certain things if I hadn't seen that comment prior to watching The Boys. Because it was in my mind. I guess I was maybe subconsciously looking for certain things a bit more. Then I could kind of be like, oh yeah, I think I see where they're going with that. I would say that to me, some of the references probably were quite subtle.
Mhm.
But like again, I don't follow politics that much. So I can imagine somebody else going, "You think it was subtle? It was in your face. It was so blatant." I can imagine somebody saying that right now. To me, it felt subtle, but yeah, again, I'm not the guy who's following a lot of this stuff. But
Yeah.
I think that a lot of stuff that I picked up on was mainly because I had it in my mind that, especially when it came to the kind of let's say the kind of MAGA references, I think they were probably a bit more blatant. Um, and I feel like for myself though, Stormfront felt like more of a reference to Trump than Homelander did, and not that at least as far as I'm aware, Trump isn't that blatant about certain things, but at the same time, like Stormfront kind of felt like that type of character who's you know I'm not trying to say Trump is a Nazi, by the way. Before anybody jumps for me, I'm not saying that. What I mean is that some scene was the type of character who was like, I'm gonna say it how I think it is. I'm gonna tell you the truth, And of course, she has her own version of the truth being, white supremacy and things like that. But that's very much her character. Like, I'm gonna tell you how it is, and she even used the phrase, they like what I have to say, they just don't like the word Nazi. And I think like Donald Trump is kind of like that as well. Like certainly to seemingly to the people who support him, he's telling them what it is. He's telling them the truth. He's telling them what they don't want you to hear. But then there's certain words that you can't necessarily use or be associated with because then it just makes the whole thing look bad. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that to me felt more like a reference to Trump than Homelander did. Um, but yeah, I could see. I feel like I could see where they're kind of pointing at, this and other things, and where it kind of fits in.
Yeah. Uh no, I wouldn't say, like, I could kind of see where you're coming from, but yeah, nah, I can't say I can't say Stormfront is like Trump. Um
Mm.
yeah, like only because like I'm really thinking about it, and everything about her is so, honestly, she gives me vibes of like the type of people. I don't want to say any specific names, but there are certain influencers or um, people with a big following online. You have attractive women or whatever, and they got these extreme, shitty point of views and opinions. And, people on the side of, on that side of things, they love it. They love it, absolutely love it. They support it, and they can't wait for her to say more stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it'll shock you sometimes if you underestimate some, if you judge a book by its cover. You see somebody, you're like, man, they look so well put together. They look so smart and everything. But then the moment they start talking, it's like, wow, where did that come from? That's pretty much where she gave me vibes of. It's like a character based off of people like that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be easier if I said names, but it would be stupid to say names.
That's cool, good.
you know.
It's so good. You don't gatster. You don't gatster. You can if you want to, but you don't gatster. But yeah, I think I can see what you mean. I think you see what you mean. Like, I mean, I guess in terms of like real life, there are those types of people that gain a following because maybe initially because they're attractive, and then they start saying all kinds of wild stuff, and like you say, people love it. So and initially the initial following is because they look good, and then they maybe stick around because they like some of the more extreme things they say. I think that's what you're getting at. Um, and I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess with Stormfront though, I mean, yeah, she's kind of cute. She's kind of cute, I guess. I mean, so let me ask you this, a little bit off topic. If Stormfront, yeah, looking as cute as she is, with all that Nazi rhetoric, was like, I'm gonna make an exception for you. What are you saying? What are you saying?
I wouldn't believe it. She hated people so bad. Like that actress is so good at that
Mm.
role.
You wouldn't
Like
risk it then.
incredible.
You
Nah.
wouldn't risk it. 'Cause
Nope.
I'm just saying, we're all the same color with the lights off. You know what I mean?
Nah. I wouldn't trust it. The way how she hates people, like it
Uh-huh.
was so funny how it was done too. Like she made it was subtle with A Train. It was very
Yeah,
subtle at first, but then it
yeah,
started to
yeah.
become more and more apparent until it was just in your face about it. And I love that. That was done so well.
But you know what? I think with the one of the reasons why it came so subtle is that the way they introduced her versus how you what you found out about her already in towards the end. They didn't introduce her as a Nazi. You know what I mean? They introduced her as this this new character, this new person to the um to the seven, and she's kind of outspoken, which is kind of cool. Like she doesn't seem to be like some corporate sellout, that kind of thing. So I feel like initially kind of on her side because she seems really cool in the beginning, and then she said something like about. I think she was talking about Stan Edgar. She said, "Yeah, he's really smart for one of those people, or something like that." And then it's kind of like, "Oh, wait, what?" You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
wait, what? Huh? And then you kind of realize, and of course you find about her history and who she is and what she represents and what she's all about. So yeah. I don't think that'd be a risk to take if that happened. That'd be a risk you don't want to take. I think. But
Yeah.
and even speaking with A Train, actually, I didn't even clock this, but yeah, she actually does get A Train removed um from the seven.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I don't think I even clocked that on the initial watch. It's kind of when I was going through the recap. I was like, oh yeah, Um, so yeah, she certainly in the beginning, I feel like she represent. I mean, going looking back in hindsight now, not that I spotted this on the first watch, but in hindsight now, I feel like in the beginning she represents, say, the subtle racist. You know what I mean? The person who's like they got all these like mad kind of racist ideas, but you don't know about it because they're very subtle about it.
Mhm.
And you might even think they're a cool person, but then every now and then they say something that's a bit odd, but because it's so subtle, you might not give it a whole lot of thought. And then of course by the end of it, she's the more blatant racist, where it's like, okay, I see that, I see who you are. Yeah, you stay over there, you stay over
Mhm.
there. But yeah, you're right though. She was played. I mean, I think a lot of the characters were just played so well. Um, they've really nailed it with their casting choices. Like their characters like were just mm, like every step of the way.
Yeah.
But speaking of racism and A Train, yeah, let's talk a little bit about A Train because I mean they've all had their story arcs, of course, but his was a real interest one because he starts off as an arsehole. He ran through Robin. It was an accident, but he just didn't even seem to care about it. He was even making jokes about it at that party that they saw him at. Um, but then it turns out he's taking Compound V because like he's slowing down. He's not as fast as he used to be, and he needs to try and keep up. So he's taking these Compound V shots so he can stay in the game as long as possible. But of course, that's affecting his heart. And
Yeah.
then it gets to a point where he just can't run anymore because it could literally kill him. And then he's trying out other things, and he gets into the whole thing about African A train, or is it A train to Africa, or do you discover the drinks? But he doesn't really care about that. He's just trying to stay relevant because he's very much into this, like, I just wants to be in a seven. He could, like, wears money, he could sell merchandise, whatever. That's all he really cares about at this point. But as
Mm,
he's doing it, and as his talking to his brother about, even with the whole thing with Blue Hawk, like, initially he didn't really care too much. He was like, "Oh, look, I'm not that guy. Was it? I think he said something like, I can't remember what he said, but I think he compared. It was like, I'm not Malcolm X. I'm somebody else, or something along those lines. That he
mhm.
said, but he didn't really care about it. It was just like, all right, whatever. But then as he's talking to him, and as he's dealing with it a bit more, he does start to care. He does start to care about what's going on as he starts to see, and certainly when his brother gets injured, he's really does start to care about what's going on. But of course, at this point, he doesn't necessarily know how to handle it. And he's so angry with what happened to his brother that he ends up grabbing Blue Hawk and dragging him, running, ignoring the fact that his doctor told him not to run. And he ends up having a heart attack and dies, or at least almost dies. But he ends up with Blue Hawk's heart, which is, I mean, for Vought, they're going to build it as this kind of success story, you know, as Blue Hawk lives on through the A Train. But for A Train, it's like, what? They put this racist man's heart in his chest. So yeah, A Train had a really interesting story arc from asshole to losing his girlfriend, or well, killing his girlfriend, really. So still an arsehole. To being humanized, and then where he is now with a racist man's heart, literally. So what was your thoughts on A Train and his story development?
In the end, A Train is still an asshole. Um, I do like the ups and downs that they had about him, and I'm not mad about it because it's realistic. Nobody just turns good just because of certain events, certain
Mm,
tragic events. There's always glimpses of hope, but then usually the way an average person will go is they need to relapse a couple of times before they actually get on the straight road and
mm,
start recovering. He's a drug addict. So, and also he's sticking with what he knows. What he knows best is the easy route, the shortcuts. And it's kind of ironic
yeah,
because his whole superpower is super speed.
speed,
So
yeah.
he's always looking for the fastest way. And even when it came to recovery time, that was his time for redemption and really healing himself. But he wasn't patient. He needed to get to where he wanted to be. He didn't like the fact, like when he had his leg broken and he's limping in the damn store and he's being watched by the guy, being treated like any average black person. He didn't like that feeling. He
Mm,
couldn't deal with it. He just wanted to be on top again. So immediately he went to taking what he knew is the best route, the fastest route. Well, not the best route, but the fastest route to get to where he wanted to be. And yeah, that's pretty much a reoccurring theme with his character is just rushing into things, rushing, and
yeah.
trying to speed and not really thinking about things and being impulsive, being quick. And that's where I'm like, that's the genius of writing his character so far. Um, yeah, he's a piece of shit. He like how he got that kid killed, um, Starlight's former boyfriend, because he was like, all right, so this is my way to get on Homelander's good side again. Instead of just waiting and seeing what happens, seeing how things play out, playing the long game, he looked for the fastest way. Um, he could have did something else with Blue Hawk, but he decided to do it the fastest way, kill him. And now he's always suffering the consequences of his actions. It seems like pretty much everything that he does negatively hasn't just gone away and that's it. It's like since the show started, it seems like everything that he does catches up with him eventually.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I didn't even think about it that way. But yeah, and I think that's pretty spot on about his character. He runs fast. He's super speed, but you can't outrun your problems. You can't
Yeah.
outrun reality. It will catch up with you eventually. And it seems like, whether it's from killing Robin from the bullshit apology that you gave early about it, to his whole attitude in the earlier stages. Like you said, decisions from taking the compound V as a booster drug, from killing Pop Claw. It's all catching up with him. You can't outrun reality.
Hmm.
And his brother Nathan was, I guess, his canary, or at least trying to be his canary, so to speak, by trying to kind of get him to, maybe help out with like the kids, help out with the community, and things like that. And he just wasn't really listening because he was more concerned about the money and the fame and the glitz and all that kind of stuff that comes with being as part of Seven. He was too focused on that. So the idea of like doing some community work is like, nah man, you go on with that, man. But he didn't necessarily realize that although his brother wasn't making big money, his brother was doing something that was meaningful. And
Yeah.
he didn't really realize that. In fact, I guess he kind of, I don't know if he fully realizes that by the time he gets to the end, but I guess he has more of an understanding of it towards the end. Because as he does start to care about it, but he's not necessarily all the way transformed so either. Um, so yeah, I think that's a really good way of a really spot on way of looking at that. He runs fast, but he can't outrun his problems, and it's all just catching up with him, all the decisions he's making, all the choices he's make. And I guess with season 4, we'll see whether he does but fully understands that he needs to slow down. Metaphorically speaking, he needs to slow down. Or is he going to just continue down this path? Like his brother's injured. They say he's never going to walk again. Um, he was angry at him, told him to get at the house. He knows that he killed Blue. He pretty much guessed that, and he is not the outcome he wanted because it doesn't reflect good in the community.
Yeah.
Um, and A Train is, I mean, I guess he somewhat realizes that, but maybe not fully acknowledges that by the time it ends. So yeah, with season 4, I guess we'll see which direction he goes in. But yeah, you can't outrun your problems. I think that's the quote of the day. that is the quote of this of this podcast episode. You cannot outrun your problems no matter how fast you are. Oof.
Yeah.
Too true, man. Too true. Um, but yeah, I mean, otherwise, I did like A Train in terms of, again, just how it was portrayed, and in terms of his character as a way of telling a story through this world of superheroes. You know, because I think that every superhero, certainly everyone in the Seven, they all kind of represent a traditional, superhero, so to speak. Like, Homelander is like the Superman type superhero. You can fly, he's got lasers, super strong, and that kind of thing. Maeve is kind of like the Wonder Woman type superhero. Um, Deep is like the Aquaman type superhero. So all clearly based on like traditional superheroes, and then A Train being based on like the Flash or um, who's the other one? One from Marvel. That guy. I didn't see that coming. Flipping out, forgot his name.
You talking
But
about
yeah, him.
Speedster?
Yeah, forgotten his name, but yeah, he's damn it, Thing's brother, um, which Scarlet Witch's
Oh,
brother.
you're talking about damn. Now you're making me forget. Silver Silver
Yes, no,
nah, not Silver Snow.
no, no,
It's
no,
Silver
no.
I don't want to say Silver Fox. Fuck.
Oh boy, this is gonna
I
bug
can't
me.
believe you made me forget because I was really
This is gonna
thinking
bug
about
me.
it.
It's gonna bug me. All right, you know what? One sec. Scarlet Witch, brother.
Um
Maximoff, Pietro Maximoff. What's
oh,
his?
Quicksilver.
Quicksilver. Yes, that's what
Okay.
I was trying to think of. Quicksilver.
Damn.
That's a superhero name. Well, it's superhero name in. Yeah,
Yeah,
it gets
yeah.
confusing. We'll get into that. But anyway, the point I was before I just lose my whole point. They're a lot of them are based on traditional superheroes. And Atrium being that speedster type superhero. So what is that in a real world? What does somebody who can run fast? How does that? And especially somebody who's losing his speed and all he has is speed. That's
Mhm.
literally all he has. He uses that. He doesn't have anything. So what does that do? Somebody who's he pretty much ignores or doesn't really acknowledge much of his roots. Coming from an underprivileged neighborhood, and he doesn't really talk about it much. He kind of pretends to some extent that never really happened. He doesn't really care much about his deeper roots in terms of going back to Africa. But if it's going to get him popular, why not? You know, um, so like he is very much like sold on this idea of, fast life, money, fame, that whole thing. He's deep in there, and to the point where he kills somebody and he's making jokes about it. And he does it. I mean, it was an accident. We saw it was an accident. He didn't set out to kill Robin, but when it happened, it was like no real remorse. I think he just said. I think he initially did say sorry, but after that, it was like he was like, oh, I think did he say sorry actually? He hits her, he stops, and he's like, oh, he says something, and he's like, I gotta go, I gotta go. And but later on, he's like,
I mean,
you
no,
know,
not the first time. He didn't say sorry, but
no,
you
okay,
know,
okay,
he
but,
apologized to Hughie a couple of times.
but yeah, it
And
wasn't
each
like,
time is a little bit more sincere.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Hughie can't get over it, and I don't blame Hughie. I get it. It's not one of those things where it's like, boy, he apologized to you already. Be nice or get over it. Nah, I get it
his apology
because
was good,
that
so that's
death
the
scene is
problem.
fucking is absolutely brutal,
And
and
it,
just the way how he was acting beforehand, you know, it was fucked up. But I noticed that each time he apologized to Hughie, it becomes a little bit more sincere. At first, it
yeah,
was like, all right, I'm doing this because I'm required to. All right, I'm sorry. And then the
yeah,
second time is like, listen, I'm sorry, but you also took something from me, trying to rationalize it. And I
mm,
think the third time or the fourth time,
at the party,
he's
yeah.
like, I'm sorry. All right,
Yeah,
you know,
that was a really good scene actually when he apologized
yeah,
because Huey was ready to like do something because he's got the power now, right? And he was
yeah,
ready to do something, and it was like, I want you to apologize. And I don't think Huey expected him to apologize because when he did, and not did he apologize, but like he said he did it very sincerely, and I think that took Huey by
yeah, it
surprise,
did.
to the point where he was like, what do I do? you know, I was ready to like get angry. What do I do? And he hits him anyway, and of course, kind of
Yeah,
gives up the fact that he took the temp V because he's like, wait a minute, how'd you do that? But yeah, I thought that was a really good scene, and in terms of like A Train's development, because like at that point he's gone through some experiences. He's killed his girlfriend.
yeah,
His brother's injured. He's seen what's going on in his community, and he can't run himself. And it's all these things that have happened to him since then, and he's that's on his mind. And even though ideally it should have had to come to that before you realize you did something wrong, you
yeah,
know, but that's what it took for him to realize that he messed up, and
yeah.
he's like, I'm sorry, you know, I meant it that time.
hmm So it's very interesting seeing what his character is going to become
Mm,
eventually. But yeah, I mean, you know, regardless of which, it's not necessarily about holding grudges with characters. It's just I want I like that these characters, some of them, you know, whether they're outright admitting it or at least showing it, that in the end they're still assholes. They still have flaws, but
mm,
when they're trying to be better, they're trying to be better. And yeah, I hope that this show goes 5 seasons. I feel like it can.
mm.
I don't want to see any more shit like that stupid ass decision to have Maeve join the fight. That was terrible. Like that was I think the one time where I was like, what the fuck were the writers thinking? And I know it's not all of them, because sometimes you have a writer in the room that just comes up with an idea and it's like, all right, let's do it. But not everybody agrees. It's just that if the head honcho or at least most of the people are saying, yeah, let's do it, can't do much. You can't say, oh, I'll quit because you guys are not doing what I think is right. Like, no, you gotta go along with whatever is being told. Um, so I don't blame all the writers. I blame
Mhm.
whoever specifically came up with that
You want
idea.
names then, yeah? You want a
Yeah,
guy's name specifically.
I want them to not be
Barry
in the writers' room
Winterbottom.
anymore.
I don't know if that's his real
Go.
name, but we're gonna call him Barry Winterbottom for now. Whether Barry Winterbottom is in that writing room, just know that Sweet Bunny don't want you there no more. Barry
I just don't
Winterbottom.
want them involved at all. Like they could watch the show, maybe give some pointers here and there, but no decision making.
Right, Barry
None.
Winterbottom, no more decision making. Cool.
But yeah.
um.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was about to say something.
No, that was it.
Oh, okay, cool. Cause yes, well, yeah, because I was just about to because I think there's a loads of stuff we can talk about, and I guess we're not going to be able to talk about every single thing about the show because there's definitely a lot, but there's a few more characters that I do want to mention that I want to get your opinion on.
Mhm.
Mainly the boys themselves. So we've got William Butcher, we've got Frenchie or Serge, and then Marvin, MM as they call him. So those guys, I think, all display very interesting attributes, and certainly the way their characters developed, because they all have their past trauma as well. Um, they're all arseholes to some level, to varying degrees. Some more than others for sure, but they're all arseholes to varying degrees.
Yeah.
Um, but then they all have like a reason to be there outside. Well, maybe I guess French is a little bit different, but whereas you know Butcher is the leader um, of the group, and Frenchie is seemingly somewhat loyal to Butcher. And to my memory right now, I'm not sure they've given the specific reasons as to why that is, but I know they've referred to him as having a leash. I guess it's something to do with their army days or something like that, but maybe we'll find that out in later seasons. And then Marvin, MM, he seems to be there, as they've said before, like, trying to keep Butcher more in line because he's kind of the glue of the group. But yeah, they all have their past trauma, and all their traumas run deep.
Yeah.
With Butcher, it's to do with his brother Lenny committed suicide, and over the way their father treated him, and the fact that he blames himself because he left before it happened, and part of him knew that Lenny couldn't was the sort of weaker one and really couldn't take it, but he left because he needed to get away, and then his brother ended up committing suicide, and he carries that guilt and that blame around with him into his adult years. You have Frenchie, who was with Nina before Butcher, and the way she treated him and had him doing all kinds of like crazy, mad things for her under her command, and apparently, I don't think they said too much about this, yes, but apparently his father was the one that had the leash on him before that. And he makes a comment that I've got a leash around my neck. The only thing that changes is who's holding it. So initially it was his father, and then it was Nina, and now seemingly it's Butcher. But Butcher, at the very least, as much as an arsehole he is, he maybe not as much of an arsehole as they were to him. So
Yeah.
far, at least, anyway, it seems. Um, and then Marvin, his trauma going back to his grandfather who was killed by a soldier boy, and how that affected his family and his own father, and his dad trying to pull away these superheroes and doing it in trying to do it by the work, and working himself to a grave where he said that his father ended up dying just hunched over his desk. And that that whole thing developing his OCD, the way he's like very particular about things, because if things aren't in order, bad things happen. So that's something that he's carried into his adult years, and the way he's very particular about order and putting things and doing things, and very specific about how many times you stir the all of that. So they all have past trauma. They all carry their trauma into their adult years. And I guess they all found each other under Mallory's command when they were in, was it the CIA, or some kind of military group? I think they're in. Um, so yeah, what's your thoughts on the boys, and their story and their individual stories?
It's very interesting. I really liked what they were doing with Frenchie, for example, especially with Kimiko.
Mm,
Uh, it got to a point around season three or in season three where Frenchie started to get a little annoying. I forgot what happened exactly, but I do remember getting annoyed with him a little bit around that time. But when they revealed the story with him and Mallory about what actually happened, why
yeah,
him and MM were beefing, that was tragic. And it was like, damn, that sucks. Um,
yeah.
I really love the relationship between him and Kimiko. Um, for Butcher, I like that nobody like at first they were taking Butcher's shit, but then eventually they started to put their foot down. I'm like,
Mm,
listen, fuck you. And
yeah.
at the end, it's like, what can you do? You're gonna like, who are you gonna fight? Really? Like, you could go
Mm,
ahead and try to fuck with. Like, the only person he could really fuck with was Hughie, and then eventually, even Hughie's like putting his foot down. I was like, fuck you, I'm not doing that. Even from what I think season one, Hughie put his foot down and was like, we gotta save them. Like when they got captured at the hotel,
yeah,
that we have to save them. And I don't care what you say. Fuck you.
yeah.
And Butcher walked off with an attitude, but whatever. Um, what else? MM is he has to be my favorite out of the bunch. Um, even from like day one, like he's so righteous. But he's not arrogant about it. He's not in your face like I'm the good one. I'm the nice one. Like no, he's just the most well put together. He has a family. He had a family pretty much. Um, he has a kid and everything. He had this girl, his girlfriend or whatever. At the time, they were together, and unfortunately, because of the whole situation involving Butcher and the heroes and all that, and them getting exposed, of course, she left him. But how he didn't even hold on to grudges or whatever, like he's not looking at her and insulting her or drowning in his depression or something. He's carrying himself because at the end of the day, he's still a father and he still has to be a father to his daughter. And he's making the best out of the situation that he's given. Of course, he wants to be back with her, but he's not being forceful about it. He's not being spiteful or whatever.
Mm,
He's such a good character, such a fun character. He's so fucking funny. Uh, he really is so damn funny. I love the scene where they went into the fucking hospital with Limelighter
oh
or the
yeah, yeah.
psych ward, and that fucking dick wrapped around his neck.
Yeah, yeah. What do you call it?
Oh, he
Love
went to
sausage or something? Or like,
yeah. So one of them crazy motherfuckers. Um, when they went to Hero Gasm, and well, you already know what happened to him. He got squirted on, and
oh
yeah,
yeah.
yo, MM is funny as hell. Even before all that, even besides the gross humor, simple things like from season one, he's cursing and yelling at Frenchie and getting ready to fight him, and then he gets on the phone with his wife. The ringtone is fucking never gonna give you up, and then he I don't know if he improvised it or what. If he improvised it, then the actor is incredible. Um, but when he had to say goodbye to his wife, he made the kissing noises and they started
Yeah.
laughing at his ass. I really hope that was improvised because if so, then please do not get rid of this character. Do not move this actor anywhere. Give him all the freedom he can get because that was funny as hell. He's consistently my favorite out of the boys. The group, I mean.
Yeah. But yeah, no, for sure. And I think a lot of his humor, um, I don't know if unintentional is the right way to describe it because I'm sure the filmmakers are doing certain things deliberately. But I think a lot of his humor from the character's perspective is unintentional. You know what I mean? Like he's not necessarily trying to be funny. He's just doing him. He's just being himself in those moments. So when it's you got the ringtone playing and he's making kissy noises, but then it turns around and they're laughing and he's super serious. Oh, like you say, he's just swearing at whatever. You know what I mean? He's not doing that because he thinks he's gonna. It's not like he's doing it because I'm trying to be the funny one. It's like that's who
Yeah,
he is. But in the
yeah,
situation, we see the humor in that. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, yeah, no, definitely agree with that. He is a funny character, but not funny in a sense that he's a comedian. It's
Yeah.
more that we see the humor in the situations because of the way they're presented to us. To him, he's super serious. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
part of why, I think we see the humor because he is super serious, in
Yeah. He
those
plays
moments.
the straight man.
Yeah, and he's a super serious guy that gets like cum squared all over him or a dick wrapped around his neck, and he's still super serious in those moments. But we're seeing the humor in that, and when he just calls it, like the love sausage or the love ham, I can't remember what he called it, but love something. But yeah, no, I'd agree with that. He's the funny one in the group, but yeah, funny. I don't want to say I'm reluctant to say unintentional. Sorry, my nose a bit itchy right now. But yeah, I'm reluctant to say unintentional because I do feel like the filmmakers are doing certain things deliberately from the filmmaker's point of view, but from a character point of view, he's not trying to be funny. He's just in that character and playing that character, well. And then we're seeing humor as perhaps the director is wanting us to see the humor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I liked MM. I'd agree. He's my favorite out the boys as well. Mainly because for me at least anyway, I think his story is very relatable. Um, having a family member that was killed, and then seeing how that affects his upbringing, and especially when you kind of realize how it relates to his OCD, because like that's something that you carry with you. You don't just get over it, like that's something that you do carry with you. So whoever's idea was to have that in there and have that part of his character, especially like he's certain things that he does, and I think it's not until maybe season 2, I think, where season 2, maybe season 3. It's certainly not in the beginning. I'm pretty sure where Annie kind of like says to him, "What's that about?" or gets him to talk about it. Um, and he just kind of opens up, and I feel like it made sense for him to talk to Annie about it because Annie's always kind of been that character that I feel like people feel like you can kind of talk to her because she does have that kind of sweet innocent look, and she is, well, for the most part, sweet and innocent. you know um so I feel like it did make sense that he would talk to her about that before he maybe talks to Butcher or before he talks to Frenchie or even Hughie, because she's very like welcoming in that respect and very much like not she's not going to make any kind of judgments or make any silly jokes about it. Like for example, when we talked about the scene where he's making kissy noises and they start laughing, that's all fun and games, that's cool, how were the boys are there, but it's things like that that also tell you, I don't know if I can talk to them about serious things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like Annie's very non-judgmental a lot of the time. Well, I think all the time, really. So it made sense that he was able to open up to her, even though he didn't know her as well or for as long as Butcher, as Frenchie, or as Hughie. Just because of her character and how she's very welcoming and non-judgmental about these things. So, yeah, that was, I don't want to say subtle, but that made sense to me.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, yeah, he was done well. Frenchie though was, I feel like Frenchie's story is probably more tragic than we're realizing at the moment. Like I'm imagining by season 4, maybe season 5, until then we might not fully know how tragic Frenchie's story is, especially when he's talking about leashes and who holds the leash and what he went through with Nina and that whole thing. And I feel like we don't even know Frenchie's full story, and by the time we do it, we might be even more horrified. You know what I mean? So, what's your thoughts on Frenchie specifically?
Frenchie, I feel like he, if I remember correctly, around season 3, I think I got annoyed with him when he started getting mad at Kimiko. He started to act all pissy, if I remember. If I'm remembering right. I didn't like that part, but other than that, I got him. I understood that, yeah, something fucked up happened. And, when it comes to the death of kids, of course, like he's been tormented by that since we met him. That's why he was heavily into drugs. Well, one of the reasons why he was heavily into drugs. And despite his friend overdosing, he
Mm,
was still taking it. And I think that may have also been a part of the reason why he liked pain. He felt like he deserved it.
Mm.
And it was more of him coping. So, but these are left to interpretations. People could just say that he's just a pervert. For me, my interpretation is when it came to that aspect of his fetish, that he likes being abused. It all boils down to his past trauma. Like, he was abused by his father. His father used to do cigarette burns on his legs and shit. Um,
Wait, did they mention that?
and
No,
yeah, when
um.
he met Kimiko, he's like trying to comfort her and understand. I understand where you're coming
Oh
from. I
yes, yeah, yeah,
think,
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I
And
know
he
you're
rolled
speaking
up
about.
his
Yeah,
leg.
yeah,
So, yeah, pain has always been a part of his life, and sometimes people that experience pain in that way, experience abuse, their mind tries. I'm not a fucking psychologist or anything, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But to my understanding, from what I remember, what I've read, you know, many, many years ago, when it comes to people who are into pain, some people cope with it by, uh, what's the word? Fetishizing it, so to speak, by making it try to turn into pleasure. This way you could go ahead and accept what happened to you, or just, get over it or whatever. It's a real weird thing that your brain does. It's not
yeah.
like people do it on purpose. Say, you can't just switch on and say, "Hey, I like pain now."
Yeah, no,
Otherwise, we'll
no.
all be doing it. Um, but yeah, it's a deep psychology with Frenchie. He's a very interesting character, and I really like the actor a lot. A lot of these actors I like a lot, but
There was,
Frenchie is
oh,
definitely
sorry.
one of the highlights of the show.
There was a bit, just speaking of the actor actually, that kind of stood out to me, and it's kind of a minor throwaway scene, I'm sure. But when Frenchie was introduced, one of my first thoughts was that he looks a lot like Vincent Cassell, like Vincent Cassell when he played Vincent in a film called The Island. It was like 1990 something, 96, I think it was, the old school French movie.
Hmm.
That's my first thought. He looks a lot like a young Vincent Cassell. And then later on, when Nina's introduced and they're talking about pain and stuff, and she says something like, "What's your safe word? Is it still Vincent Cassell?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, they see it too. They see it." But yeah, yeah. So it was kind of a throwaway scene, but yeah, the actor does look like a young Vincent Cassell. Not a bad thing, by the way. They're both very good looking. But yeah, he does look like a young Vincent Cassell. By the way, have you seen Lan? You know I'm talking about Vincent Cassell?
Yeah, I know the actor, but as far as like any movies that he's in, I don't remember.
Ah, okay, okay. Well, The Hand's a really good
But
movie.
I've
Fully,
definitely
fully.
seen his face,
Um,
and I know him by name.
it's a great movie from like I think it's 96 or 90 something. It's an old school movie now, but yeah, if you've not seen it, definitely recommended. Um, and okay, so let's talk a little bit about Butcher now then, because the star of the show, played by Carl Urban, um, Billy Butcher, William Butcher. Uh, he starts off introducing himself to Hughie as an FBI agent. Turns out that was a lie, right? Um, he tells that he's investigating Soups and trying to bring him to justice. In fact, he even tells Hughie in the beginning that Homelander's the only one that's hasn't done anything really bad, which again was a lie. He's done
Mhm.
plenty of bad things, and he knew that, but it was all a lie. Um, so yeah, he doesn't tell the truth very much, and when he does tell the truth, he often withheld a lot of information.
Yeah.
Um, it turns out that the main reason he's after Homelander is because Homelander raped his wife. He thought, well, I guess most people thought he was dead. I think he still held on to some hope that she was still alive. Whether he believed it or not, we don't really know for sure. But he was maybe holding on to some small hope that she was still alive. Turns out she was still alive, and had a son by the rapist, which the rapist Homelander himself didn't even know about until later on in the season. So a lot of secrets and lies going on there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the character, and of course, we find out later on about his past trauma, about the way his father treated him, and his younger brother committed suicide, and him carrying that guilt. So we certainly understand why he is the way he is, um, but he is an arsehole. He is pretty much an arsehole from beginning to end. He lies, he mistreats people, he uses people. He doesn't see. He has very. I think he might have apologized for something once. I think, but he doesn't really show much remorse for a lot of the things he does. In fact, a lot of times he pretty much like just kind of either fobs it off, or kind of makes up some excuse for it, or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't really acknowledge a lot of things. So he is, like I was saying before, he's not a nice person. He's not a good person, and ultimately there are no real good guys. But this guy isn't. Like, he's very much Homelander. You know what I mean? He's Homelander without superpowers. And even when he gets the temporary superpowers, his powers are very similar to Homelander. And Kumiko said something really interesting, that you know, the compound V didn't make me a monster. I was already a monster. The compound V just made me more of who I already was. And although I don't necessarily think that's a very, I don't think that's supposed to be a literal thing about it makes you more of who you was. But I do think there is something to that, and perhaps on a deeper level, like it maybe emphasizes certain things. And certainly when you look at, say, Hughie, when he took the compound V and he was able to teleport, he's always been the type that's trying to help everybody but couldn't, be in all these different places, but he can't do that. Now he can teleport, right? So
Yeah.
the fact that Butcher's superpowers were very similar to Homeland's superpowers, I feel like that is a very kind of direct or indirect, or a direct way of saying that William Butcher and Homelander are not that different. And if you look at their characters, they're really not. Like, I mean, maybe Homelander is a bit more on the extreme, but that's maybe because he's always had superpowers and has no other life. William Butcher hasn't always had superpowers, but the moment he did, the first thing he did was kill was it gunpowder? What's his face? Was kill that guy, So, like, I feel like, yeah, William Butcher and Homelander are pretty much very similar characters. They're just on opposite sides of this war, of somebody trying to take down the superheroes, and somebody trying to, rule the world, or whatever. Homeland's trying to, trying to be the extreme as he can and have the whole world love him for his powers, and that kind of thing. What was your take on that?
Um, I don't really. I mean, of course, there's always going to be similarities between, people who are basically rivals, but I really don't particularly see a hand-to-hand kind of thing, or two sides of a coin kind of ordeal between him and Homelander. Only because, like, breaking down Homelander is like, Homelander was traumatized by his upbringing, and just like the guy who was in the wheelchair had told him, who also played a big character in The Wire. So I love that actor. And he was also in Gotham. He's a really good actor anyway. But yeah, that guy, he said, a lot of my subjects who weren't raised by mothers turned out to be fucked up. And for Homelander, that rings true most especially. Um, it's not to say that if Homelander had a mom, he probably would have been better. There's no guarantee of that, but
Hmm.
for what it is, for what happened, it's definitely something, like a true statement when it comes to him. Now, for Butcher, yeah, the mom there is just that his father was a drunk asshole and very abusive, and he felt like he had to be tough, he had to be hard, and all of that. Homelander wasn't really on the spectrum of like, oh, I have to be tough, I have to be hard. It's more like, I have to play this role, I have to be like this, I have to be um this superhero, this image that they portray. But fuck these people, they're so weak, they're so naive, I could crush them in a second, they have no idea what I'm capable of. How dare they even have me do this facade in the first place. But he's afraid of being alone too. Butcher is not really afraid of being alone. Butcher just wants what he wants, and that's that. He wants his wife back, and he wants revenge for whatever happened to her, whether she's dead or alive. He wants revenge. He can't get over it. He can't move on because he made most of his life for the past few years focused on just that. And even though she's dead and gone, he still can't move on because he hasn't felt satisfaction yet. And that's the thing. Um, with when it comes to revenge, you even if you get revenge, it's still an empty place because you're not going to find satisfaction. What you have in your mind, what your fantasy is of accomplishing that is going to be far greater than the reality of the situation if it even occurs. So it's pretty much just watching Butcher helplessly um run towards that goal that he set for himself. And he's been on that for so long, and he's willing to do anything and willing to sacrifice anybody pretty much for that goal. um the first person to really make him stop and like truly stop for at least, even if it was just for a couple of moments, was Ryan. And that was because of his promise to Becca and how much he loved her. That's one thing that rang true. Homelander, he never really loved anyone until he met Ryan. And even that is like starting, at first it was iffy, but now it's starting to develop. Now he's starting to really, see, yeah, this is my son. This is my son. This is, a part of me. I finally have somebody that's a part of me. I'm not alone. In that regards, I could see it, but Butcher, I don't. I think Butcher is okay with being alone. He just loves Becca so much. He doesn't give a fuck about being alone. It's just that he wants Becca. Like he was even at one point, he was like, "Yo, just leave with me. Fuck the kid." He wasn't even thinking about the fact that yeah, she's gonna be
Yeah.
attached to this kid. She gave birth to this kid. He didn't care about that, and he couldn't even really fathom it at first. Even towards the end, he was like, "What the fuck?" But yeah, Homelander, he didn't love anybody. Even if he thought he did, he didn't fucking love anybody. Um, so yeah, I mean, they got similarities, of course, but nah, I can't
Okay.
say they're similar to each other.
So with that though, I mean, you've got say William Butcher, who is from the way he was raised, like he was badly mistreated from his dad, right, and his mum, who's I guess maybe cared a little bit, but maybe not enough to really stop it. So as a kid, he's never really had that parental love, that, or at least in not at least not in traditional sense, So by the time Becca comes along, that's his love attachment, and like you said, like he's even willing to leave the kid. He doesn't. He's just attached to where even when our own sister was like, she's dead. We've got a headstone for her, and they've accepted that she's passed away and it needs to move on. He's still holding on to this idea. That's his love attachment.
Mm.
With Homelander, his love attachment is the people. He needs the people of him, and that perhaps comes from, well, he never had, like I say, he didn't really have parents growing up. He was raised in a lab, so like he's yearning for that acceptance, and that's all he's ever known is this idea of like popularity and fame and that whole thing. So I think they are still yearning for some kind of love, not the same love clearly, but they are still yearning for a love, and that attachment to that love could, I mean, I guess attachment, any kind of love, it could be your downfall. That's just the same with anybody, really. but, um, but ultimately, for them, I guess where it intersects is Ryan. Ryan being Homelander's son, so he has that love for him. Um, Butcher maybe doesn't quite have that same kind of love for Ryan, but ultimately he loves Becca so much, and he promised her. Well, technically, he didn't actually promise. If you want to get technical, he didn't actually promise. But anyway, he made a promise to Becca that you'll take care of her, right?
Yeah.
On a deathbed. So now he
Yeah.
feels that attachment through Becca that he now needs to take care of. And he's not doing a great job, let's be honest. Well, I mean, I guess he tried at the beginning, but then he kind of messed it up towards the end. And even though he had, good intentions, although he was kind of sending Ryan away because he didn't want him to get hurt, at the same time it just pushed Ryan one more to Homelander. Now Homelander, again, he loves Ryan, but I mean, I guess we don't know what his intentions are. I mean, that's the thing, and that's where I feel like the show has this kind of really good way of telling a story. Because, like, on one hand, we can see Homelander cares for his son, but he's such a messed up person that even if he has good intentions, you can't imagine that he's going to do good things with him. You know what I mean? So, because he's such a messed up individual. But then you look at William Butcher, and he's not much better, really, is he? Like, even if he has good intentions, can he really raise a kid? Like, it's like either
Yeah.
way, this Ryan kid is screwed. Whoever you go with, whoever he picks. I think it's probably best he stays with Mallory. Actually, I think she's kind of screwed up herself. Come to think about it, so like, yeah, no, one way or another, this kid's screwed up. He's not having a good life at all. No matter what, he is not having a good life. Like, they should probably send him to an adoption agency as Sutton and just throw him to, you know what I mean? Like, he's not having a good life no matter what.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I do think the similarities are more than just passing. I think they are similar on deeper levels as well as more surface levels. Of course, they're not exactly the same in terms of their upbringings and everything else. I don't mean that, but I do think their similarities do run quite deep. They're both carrying around trauma from their, well, everybody's carrying around trauma from their childhood from in the show, clearly. But these two in particular, they're both carrying around trauma from their childhood in relation to either whether it's the way their parents treated them or the fact they just didn't have parents at all. And with by the way, just something real quick with Homelander, that whole thing with milk, that milk fetish that he has. Like,
Yeah.
they haven't really explained that, but I guess it's something to do with not being breastfed. That's what I'm assuming right now. It's something to do with maybe not being breastfed or stuff
I
like that.
mean, yeah, I mean, because the way how babies know to breastfeed is because they can actually smell milk, you know. Um, so for him, I just kind of interpret it as like just that, like, as a baby, you're yearning for that connection. Breastfeeding also bonds like the kid with their mom and all that shit. And that goes for pretty much any mammal kind of
Mm.
species or whatever. Uh, yeah, I always put two and two together as far as that went. Like, it's like a mommy fetish. I
Yeah.
even know somebody, not to go into too many details about it, but
Name
I
and
know
shame. Name and
somebody.
shame him. I'm kidding. You don't have to. You don't have to.
I know somebody that he's how can I describe it without, because I don't know. I don't want anybody ever, hearing it and then be like, hey, you're talking about me.
Mm.
But for the sake of this, I know somebody who's pretty much going through a dilemma of like, um, they're looking for somebody to play that kind of role of a mother, but unfortunately, nobody's trying to do that per se, for what he's searching for. And he would never outright say it, but he shows it through actions. And sometimes through words, but not directly saying, yeah, because nobody's gonna ever say that really, unless you're really like, I'm fucked up in the head. I realize it and I don't care.
Yeah.
you know? But normally you're not gonna admit it because you may not even realize it. But through your actions, it shows that yeah, you have a mommy issue. You need a mommy. That's what you really want. And yeah, Homelander is like that. Like, it's repeated in certain things. Like, he's just looking for somebody to take care of him and guide him. That's why he likes Stormfront so much. He likes a woman to be dominant and put him in his place, take care of him and baby him, because that's all he's looking for. That's why he acts like a little fucking kid. Like with Stormfront, when he got mad because she was lying to him. He just wants somebody to be honest with him. He could actually feel loved and trust them and everything. Because honestly, from what I understand, this is not to sympathize with him too much, but this is just me going based off what I've seen.
Hmm.
He's a character that's very insecure and going over
Yeah.
this whole idea of like, damn, nobody could love me because I know I'm a monster. I know how fucked up I am. Even
Hmm.
though it's not my fault, I know how fucked up I am. And that's something that's deep inside of him. He doesn't want to admit that it's his fault that he's fucked up. You know, he doesn't want to take responsibility for it because he was a victim, but he won't let go of like, okay, I've transitioned from the victim to the victimizer, you know? And yeah, you know, that's the way I took it. It's mommy issues and insecurity.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think especially his relationship with Madeline Stillwell in the first season,
Oh,
you know,
definitely.
that was very much, you know, mummy fetish, or you know, or that whole thing, like the way he would like lie on her lap, and you
Yeah.
know, she'll like, you know, stroke his head and something like that. And um
Even when they had sex, the way how she would talk to him, you know, and
wait,
how
they
he
had
was
sex, when they had sex?
apologizing. Yeah.
Oh, was that, you mean with a doppelganger?
No. They had sex on the sofa. Yeah, the sofa in her office.
Oh
And
wait, okay, right. I think yeah. In the, yeah, during like the first 3 episodes, I think, wasn't it?
I don't know
It
if
was like the
I don't
first, like
remember if it
maybe
was the first three
like
episodes, but
it was early in
it
the
was
season
definitely
though, wasn't
season
it?
one. It was definitely season one.
Yeah,
I know
like
that
early
for
in the
sure.
season.
Probably.
I think on the, yeah. I kind of, yeah. I guess I forgot it for a moment, but I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So during that sex scene, you know, she's on top of him and first off, she's controlling the whole situation. She told him to take his pants down. She told him to sit down. And she's on top of him. And when he goes to grab her waist to take control, she smacked his hand away and you know pretty much just controlled the whole thing. And he was like apologizing because he came too quick. And
Oh
you know
yeah,
she comfort the words that she was saying to him, like comforting him like he was a kid, you know.
Okay, yeah, no,
So
I remember. I remember. Yeah. I remember.
yeah.
And also something real quick though, just based on the way you described that whole scene. How many times have you watched that? Like
um
you just rewind that scene and watch it over and over again. You just describe it like play by play. Like, yeah, he puts his hand here and she smacks
well,
him
because
away and
like
he
it was
comes to.
very when all jokes aside, it
Be
was
honest, you got
a
to
very
repeat, haven't you?
it was a very interesting scene because it was like you get to see Homelander throughout the fucking episode by episode. He's in control. He's yelling at the seven like they're little fucking kids and all that shit. But the
Yeah,
moment she starts putting her, you know, she doesn't yell at him or anything, but she talks to him like you know, she's his mom. Like he goes into this very passive
hmm.
demeanor. Like you know, she could control him. But at the same time, the reason why I say he's clever, he's not dumb. I never want anybody thinking Homelander's dumb, is because he quickly catches on whenever she's manipulating him.
Yeah,
You know, he does it in subtle ways. He'll go ahead and say, "Nah, that's okay. You be mommy and all that shit." Because what he cares about is the truth. Like he doesn't want to pretend that he's loved. He wants to actually be loved, and you can see through her bullshit.
yeah. So he
Homelander
kills
is
her in the end.
very cunning.
Mm.
So that scene really stood out to me when I was rewatching it. I was like, damn, this guy really turns into a fucking baby when he's around certain women. Stormfront did the same thing to him. When they were having their relationship, she was the one telling him, stop being a bitch and actually laser my laser
Yeah,
my
yeah,
tits.
yeah,
You know? And he loves that. He loves feeling like, okay, I got a mommy pretty much.
yeah. No, for sure, for sure. Speaking of that, actually, laser in their tits. They haven't segue. They haven't specified, haven't said this. I don't think, but my feeling is that Ryan is stronger than, like, more powerful than Homelander. Um, because like he was blasted away at Stormfront and barely did anything, if anything, to her at all. Whereas Ryan like cut her in like pieces when he shut his eyes at her. and burnt her up good as well. So I feel like Ryan is stronger. Like they haven't explored it, they haven't maybe made it clearer. But I feel like Ryan is at least naturally more powerful than Homelander.
I think he has a potential to be, but at this time, no. I think with Homelander, he's more trained and more restrained. It's like Superman
Yeah,
pulling his
yeah,
punches and everything. Uh, Homelander, because you gotta remember, um, I used to, before I rewatched this series, I mean the seasons, um, I used to think, damn, Homelander is not really that strong because of the whole plane scene. But when I got to rewatch it, I was paying attention to everything that he was saying. He was definitely fast enough to save the plane, but he was too strong to control it based on the situation. He said, if I were to move that fast, right, I'm gonna crash through the plane. If I try to go ahead and
yeah,
push it, I'm gonna crash through. If I She was like, all right, well, how about you come back and you know keep flying back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. He possibly could have, but it's like the chance that he fails at that is not worth it. It's not worth the trouble. Like he didn't want to. Now the reason why I believe he could have is because in the scene where Butcher lets go of the bomb, somehow he saves Butcher, saves the baby, and he does that in an instant
yeah, yeah,
without the baby being hurt by the sound of the explosion too. So that proves like how powerful he truly is when he's at his maximum um potential. Whereas Ryan is just he doesn't know how to control his power. It's just based off of
yeah,
just pure
yeah.
rage, and he just unleashed everything.
Yeah, he's
So
an
if that's
X-Men
the
kid right now.
strongest, yeah, if that's the strongest that he's got, then it's like Homelander will be hurt, but I don't think Homelander could be like beaten down by Ryan. He might be hurt by Ryan if anything, but nah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Ryan could beat Homelander in a fight. Certainly not right now, because like you said, he's not trained. He barely knows how to use his powers or control them in any kind of way. So that needs to happen. But,
Yeah.
Homeland's been doing this his whole life for, was it 30 years? Probably, I don't know if they say his age, but I guess about 30 or something like that. Um, Ryan is just kind of uncontrolled and untamed the beast right now.
Yeah.
But when that all comes out, he was able to slice up, Stormfront, and I think that's significant. So I think there's a point where Ryan, if he goes down this route, learns to control his powers and learns to, you know, be more learn, was it what they say X-Men, like the balance between emotional and something, or what was he learns all that Professor X stuff, right? you know
Yeah.
yeah, I feel at that point he could probably beat Homelander. Right now, yeah, Homelander is going to be, yeah, he's smart, he's more experienced, everything else that comes into that sort of thing. But I do think that in terms of just raw power, my feeling right now is that, yeah, Ryan is more powerful. He's not necessarily a better fighter or anything like that, but I think in terms of just raw power, he's more powerful. Probably not stronger, actually, in terms of physical strength. I guess probably not, but I think in terms of just raw power, probably strong. But yeah, we'll find out. I mean, I guess like you say, he could have been, even though Stormfront was being just laser my tits, just laser. He could have still been pulling it. He still could have been pulling his lasers. So maybe,
Oh,
maybe.
he definitely was. Definitely.
I mean, you don't want to slice up the chick you're trying to bang just in case, like,
Yeah. He didn't want to lose
whoops,
Stormfront.
whoops.
That's why you know, he lost it when he saw that she killed herself. When he made the
Mm,
girl jump to her death.
yeah.
And that
No,
scene
he
was
couldn't care no more.
pretty cool
Yeah.
because it's a callback to, at least I think it is. It's a callback to this short little comic about Superman preventing a girl from jumping off the roof.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a sick twist to that.
Okay. I'm assuming Superman saved the girl though. I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah, he talked her out of it. Like that was the interesting part. It was like he just shows up and instead of saving her, like she jumped off and he flew or whatever. He sat there, he spoke with her, and he convinced her, not to jump. And that was the interesting part about that short comic, is that Superman saved somebody just by talking to them instead of doing his Superman stuff.
Yeah. With that scene though, let's say it, don't spray it, excuse me. With that scene though, um, he initially does talk her out of jumping, and then of course when he gets the news that Stormfront killed herself, like he talks her into jumping. But
I
what we don't,
mean, if I remember the scene correctly, he doesn't necessarily talk her out of jumping. He scares her because, like, he's like saying, "Hey, don't jump or whatever," blah blah, and she's going to. But when he sees that, he starts saying, "You know what? Some people deserve to die. Some people blah blah blah, and she didn't deserve to die. You deserve to die. How about you just go ahead and jump? Just go ahead." And that's when she's like, "Nah, I don't want
yeah,
to."
but that's
And no,
what
go
I mean
ahead.
is there was a point where at least it seemed like she wasn't going to jump after what he was talking, after what he said, and then he started, trying to get her to jump. What was interesting to me is that you don't actually see her jump, because the camera comes down and you just see her falling. So what we don't know is that did she actually jump or was she pushed?
No,
You
he
know what I mean?
killed
We
her.
don't we don't know that. Not for sure. We assume she jumped, but we don't know that for sure. And I thought that was, and to me that's interesting because it's like, initially he was like, "Oh yeah, don't do it," and it seemed like she wasn't going to. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, just go ahead and jump. Who cares? Blah blah blah." And she was like, "What? But you said this." She was kind of hesitant. So like, I feel like once you've kind of gone that way in your mind, you probably, I guess I can't talk for this, but it's at least to my mind and to how I imagine it, and if, yeah, I guess I can't talk from experience, right? I get that, but it seems to me that once you've kind of gone that way of like, why would I do that? You wouldn't actually jump. So I feel like I'm leaning more towards Homeland pushed her, or Blue, or did a super breath or whatever. You know what I mean? I feel like Homeland pushed her in some way, and it just looks like she fell because from where the camera is, that's what it shows. But yeah, I guess we'll never know.
I mean, nah, I
Never
feel
will,
like it
never
was
will.
obvious that he killed her ass. I feel
Okay.
like it was straight. Yeah, I feel like it was straightforward that he killed her ass. Um, yeah, that girl didn't want to jump after that. Like once he was scaring her ass, she didn't want to jump.
Mm.
Um, I don't think that they pulled the camera away to make it seem like a what if, like, or you decide. I think it was just one of those things where um just to get the people's reaction and kind of like,
Mm.
be shocked, like, damn, this motherfucker actually did that. Because yeah, they could have showed Homelander drag her and then push her off or whatever the case may be, but it's like we already seen him do horrible shit already.
Mm.
Let's focus on the people's reactions, like before, during, after. How fast it happened.
Well, speaking of Homelander killing people, it ends with Homelander killing somebody at the crowd, and the crowd of supporters, and but one of them there's something against him or negative towards him, and he lasers his head off. And then Todd, the guy who's dating MM's ex-wife, and
Mhm.
raising or helping to raise MM's daughter, he led the chairs in Homelander killing that dude in front of everybody, and of course everybody else started cheering as well. And I think, yeah, Ryan was smiling along with it as well, and you know Homelander seeing that everybody loved that he killed that guy, started smiling, and so this Todd guy, okay, we don't know much about Todd other than that he's dating MM's ex-wife, he's helping to raise a daughter, but we know he's like the superheroes. We know he's kind of a fan of Homelander, but up until that point, we kind of assume that he doesn't see the negative on the bad sides of the superheroes, and just maybe he's just a fan of all the good stuff that the media puts out into the world. But as it turns out, more and more, he's perhaps maybe what does they say? Drinking the Kool Aid? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
he's he's sweet sipping on that nectar. But yeah, he seems to be like pretty much on board with Homelander killing guys that oppose him. Um, and has no issue with it, and that's the guy that's looking after MM's daughter. So, hmm, right, hmm,
Yeah.
that could be an interesting thing for season four. How that see to hear how that develops, 'cause especially as he's already having issues with MM when he said about not taking his daughter to the rally or something, and doesn't want to be involved with all that kind of stuff. And but yeah, that could be a blowout.
Yeah, I mean, for Todd, he's. I'm just afraid that he's going to turn into one of those annoying characters. I hope they don't spend too much time on him and give him too much attention, because definitely he's going to be one of those characters that's um, like how in wrestling you have heels. There are some heels that you love to hate, and there are some heels you just like, yo, this character's fucking annoying. I don't like this guy, and he's just getting nothing but a negative reaction from you. And that's where Todd falls. It's not one of those characters where I love that he's on the scene because I can't wait to start hating on him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's definitely a huge potential there. And of course, it's all speculation and all waits to be seen, and we may not even know for a long ass time to see what they actually do with it. Um, but speaking of season four, and I guess we said a few things already, but what would you say is the main thing you would like to see for for season four, for when that eventually rolls around?
I want to see more of the heroes. I know they're having a spin-off kind of thing going on, but I want to see more of that in the actual show. I don't want to necessarily just focus on those new group or the younger group of people, because I could watch the spinoff for that, but I want to see them more involved, mixing in with the current group of people, not
Oh,
standing out too.
right.
Hmm?
Do you mean like the heroes that not the ones that aren't in the seven?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So
Right.
I want to see more soups. I want to see just more characters involved and reacting to what's going on and reacting to the people that's involved. Um, I definitely want to see more Soldier Boy and the dynamic between Soldier Boy accepting Homelander, accepting the fact that Homelander is his son. And that doesn't necessarily mean he has to start treating Homelander like nice and shit. I don't care. Just keep it the way how you wrote it. Um, you wrote that he's an asshole. Okay, let's continue with that. Let's see where it goes. Is it going to go up or down? I want to see more of that. Um, I want to see the deterioration of Butcher. I don't want to turn around and be like, all right, Butcher got is not sick anymore. No, you set up this narrative. Now deal with the consequences and let's see Butcher actually, perish. Or,
Yeah.
he doesn't even have to die in season four. If there's a season five, have him die in that. Or let it be, implied like, okay, if season four is the last season, it's safe to assume that Butcher is going to die, even though we don't see his death, is definitely a high key chance that he's going to be presumed dead. Something like that. But I really hope that it's not just an assumption. I fucking hate when things are like an open ended book. Like, because then you have nothing but theories and, oh, I believe this, I believe that. I don't want it. I just want a definite answer. If you set up the consequences already, don't turn back now. Because otherwise, if you didn't have the balls to go through with it, you shouldn't have started it in the first place.
Mm. Yeah. No, for sure.
Um,
Oh, go for it.
with Starlight, I do want to see more Starlight. Maeve, I don't want to see again. I feel like
Okay.
Maeve, she had enough. She already left a bad taste in my mouth. Just let her be. Just let her be. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think setting up with Butcher, they said he's got like 12 to 18 months to live, and yeah, I think once you're doing stuff like that, but yeah, you don't want to cop out or have something where it's like, oh, we found a cure at the last minute. You know what I mean? I feel like that. I mean, put it this way: if the, I don't want to say that if they did that, it's going to be rubbish because I'd hope if they're going to do that, they could find a way beyond my minds to still make it interesting and good and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, that's what I'd want to see is just something good and interesting that I didn't even think of and blows my mind. But typically speaking, when you go with oh, he's about to die, but we found his last minute cure. It just feels like a cop out. So I hope whatever they do, it just doesn't feel like a cop out. It doesn't feel like, it just dumb and silly or whatever. I don't personally mind things that are left open where you could theorize about what happened, but yeah, at the same time, yeah, you do want closure as well. You want a good solid closure where you could be like, okay, this is how this is resolved, and maybe leave a few things to mystery, you know. As far as Maeve goes, I personally wouldn't mind if Maeve came back. I wouldn't mind, but I think if they are going to bring her back, maybe don't bring her back right away. Like maybe have her come back maybe towards the end as some kind of surprise or something like that. Um, and Starlight, yeah, I don't. I mean, Starlight. I'm sure she'll be there. Well, God willing, nothing happens to the actress and nothing like that. But I'm sure she'll be there, barring any kind of things. Yeah, I mean, she's definitely got a lot more story to tell. A lot. I think there's definitely a lot more they can do with her character development. Especially when she's coming out of the whole thing about believing that she was somebody chosen by God to have these powers, of finding out that they were just running these tests, and her mother agreed to the getting injected with the compound V, and then lying to her whole life, and then having to deal with that and how it fits into with her faith and what she believes and what she doesn't believe and all that sort of stuff. So I do feel like there's a lot you can do just with that, which they kind of touched on a little bit already, but certainly a lot more you can tell within that realm of losing your faith, and what does that mean, and do you regain your faith, do you change your what I mean, that whole thing, and what does that mean in terms of how she sees the world and how she views things, and what does that do to the type of person she is? Does that change her moral compass? All there's so much you can do within that. And like I said, they kind of touched on it a little bit, but certainly more to tell there. And yeah, Hughie, to see how he develops further. He seems to be making more and more excuses for for Butcher and his bad behavior. Butcher knocks him out and he's like, oh, you must have done it to save me. He's like, dude knocked you out. You know what I mean? You punched in your face. And you're like, oh, but he did it to save me. It's like, bruh. But so we'll see how that develops, where he just keeps looking for the good in people, no matter what it is, or whether he does indeed take the last that final vial of the temporary V to have one last shot at having a superpower and maybe going crazy with it. But yeah, there's a lot of areas they could explore. But I mean, in the end, hopefully, whatever they do, it's just a great show. And yeah, but I do think you're right though. Season 4, possibly season 5, at a stretch, they can maybe do a season 6. At a stretch, but yeah, I'm feeling like 4 or 5 seasons and it's done. I don't think this is the type of show that has 8, 9 seasons kind of legs, and I don't think it needs to be. I feel like you can make a really good story and tell a really great story within a few seasons, and that's all it needs to be. But yeah, I feel like yeah, 4, maybe 5 seasons and it's done. And you could end it on a bang, and yeah, rather than dragging it out for way longer than it needs to, and it just like fizzles out and nobody cares anymore. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
but yeah, that's yeah. But yeah, I think we said a lot about The Boys seasons 1, 2, and potential for season that's 1, 2, and 3, and potential for season 4. I feel like I've said pretty much everything I've wanted to say about the 3 seasons. Was there anything you wanted to add or chip in or throw in? Any characters that I'm sure we missed a bunch of characters actually. So anything you wanted to add, any characters or anything you wanted to mention that we haven't said already?
Nah, honestly, out of all the characters that I can think about, I just want to see more Soldier Boy. I wasn't satisfied with what we had. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing, because every moment that he was on, whether he was an asshole or not, I loved it. I fucking loved it. I'm talking about every goddamn moment, whether it was good or bad, was just it had my eyes glued to the screen. I love Soldier Boy.
Yeah, no, he's definitely one of the standout characters, and how they introduced him to how they developed him in that short amount of time, and even to his father-son moment of "you're a disappointment," with
Yeah.
with Homelander. Yeah, yeah, he was a top quality. He was a good character to
And
have
some
in. And
people were saying that when he was talking to Homelander in that scene, that he was actually talking about himself.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I like that. I like that
Well,
idea.
let me say, oh yeah, like I thought of that at the time. I didn't figure that at the time, but yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that, and especially when he talks about his father was said to him. Um, so yeah, I can definitely see that when he said that, it was every bit as much about himself as it was about Homelander. Um,
Yeah.
and just how they talk about that, I'm sure you heard that say, hurt people, and the
Yeah.
way Homelander was treated has effects on the way he treats people. The way Billy Butch was treated has effects on the way he treats people, and Ryan being that father figure to him. So yeah, the way they're all coming, bruh. You know what season 4 should be? Everybody gets therapy. Like that's what it should do. Everybody gets therapy. That's what it should start off with. But you know what? You're all screwed up. Let's get everybody therapy because you clearly all need it. And then we can live happily ever after. That's what I want to see for season 4. The season 4 starts off with, you know what? Therapy. We got all this money. Force be like, yeah, we're just gonna spend all the money and get everybody therapy. That's what we're doing. Because they are all messed up. I mean, look, in real life, everybody's messed up to some degree. I know that we all carry in things from our past that we're not always dealing with as we should be. But yeah, the way it's done in this show is like, bruh, like bruh. But yeah, everybody gets therapy. That's what I want to see for season 4. um, But yeah, I think that's be a good place to wind down this episode of the Uncivilized Art Podcast. Um, if you have any suggestions of shows or other things you want to see us or hear us talk about, let us know. Drop comments or hit the Twitter at Uncivilized Art, and all that good stuff. Like, follow. I should probably say this stuff earlier. Like, follow, share. I should learn to pimp out my podcast like a professional. One of these days, I might actually do that, like a professional, by the way, because I'm not a professional. I don't claim to be professional. I just maybe tend sometimes while I'm scratching my back. Uh, but yeah, one of these days I might actually do that and actually pimp this thing out and be like, "Yo, like, subscribe." Anyway, anyway. But yeah, that's gonna be all for this episode. So thank you for watching and or listening. Big up to my man Sweet Bundy for coming through. Appreciate you and all that you do. Look out for future episodes. And check out previous episodes if you haven't. And yeah, till whenever, if ever. Peace.